Welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I'm Yaakov ben Yisrael, and I'm going to be joined later with Hakhams Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. Today we will be reading through Parashath WayYera. That is Genesis chapter 18, starting at verse 1, and it will continue through chapter 22, verse 24. But I'll wait just a few minutes and wait for some people to join. Get everything set up here. So let me know if the sound is okay. Last week I had a problem with my Bluetooth. The normal Bluetooth I use is, I think, broken. So I had to pull out my old Jabra, and last week they said I sounded like I was in a fishbowl. So hopefully everyone can hear me okay today. So if you can hear me okay, just let me know in the comment. Sounds good. Thank you. That's great. I would play some music, but YouTube has an algorithm that'll flag our videos if we play music, unless we have the copyright free or whatever music. And I haven't actually done any digging to find any. So it'll be a little boring until I can get some soundtracks that won't pull any flags. I'm going to post the link too, so that if anyone wants to come into the studio, this is the link. Okay. So hopefully that posted everywhere. And also, I've had a lot of requests to do a Hebrew grammar course. So I started a Google Classroom. I did that once before. Last year, I had about 20 people actually join the class, and it just didn't work out. So I closed the class. I think I was there for about 2 months, and then I finally ended up closing the class. But I've had a lot of people ask me to start the class again, so I started a new Google Classroom. And so the link is at the World Alliance of Qara'im Facebook page. Is there. What I'll do is, after all this is over with, I'll go find it, and I'll put the link to the classroom in the description too. Shalom, Rich. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're about 5 minutes in. I'll go ahead and get started. We are in Parashath WayYera, and that will be in Genesis chapter 18, starting at verse 1. WayYera אליו אדוני באלוני ממרא, והוא יושב פתח האוהל כחום היום. And so Adonai appeared to him, the Eloni Mamre, which literally means at the oaks of Mamre. And I think I mentioned this last week. In Lech Lecha, we have Avram going to a place that's called Elon More. And More and Mamre are basically the same, in my opinion. Mamre is Aramaic. It's a Hafel form, and it means rebellious. And More, although many people seem to think that it means a Torah teacher, I believe that it actually means rebellious. But anyway, this is a place where Avram was had set his tent. And it says that Adonai appeared to him at the oaks of Mamre, and he was sitting in the opening of the tent at the heat of the day, Kahom Hayom. And we see in Parashath Bereshit where it talks about Adam and Hawa, how they heard the voice of God, and it says Karuach Hayom. And they always, I don't know if they always do it, but most translations say that it was in the cool of the day. The word ruach, although it means a wind, in Semitic languages it means to go. And so you can even think of it this way. If I was to ask in Arabic, where are you going? I would ask you basically, wain taruh, where are you winding to? Or where are you blowing to? And so Karuah Hayom can also mean at the close of the day. וישא עיניו וירא, והנה שלושה אנשים ניצבים עליו, וירץ לקראתם מפתח האוהל, וישתחוו ארצה. And he lifted up his eyes, WayYera enough, and he lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and behold, there were three men, Nitzavim alav, which a nitzav means to be standing in front of somebody. Nitzav means to set something up. In fact, you have the matseva. Matseva is a standing stone, and it's from the same verb. And he looked, and he ran to meet them from the opening of the tent, and he prostrated himself towards the earth. Now, what's interesting is that all it says was that he was sitting in his tent, or at the door of his tent. He looked up and he saw three men, and he immediately ran to meet them, and he bowed himself or prostrated himself towards the ground. There's nothing really here to warrant this behavior. It doesn't say that he noticed that they were two angels, or which we'll see later that they probably were, or that they were anything special. He just happened to see three men, and he went out to meet them. WayYomar, and so he says, Adonai, Imna Masafi Hain De'anecha, Alna Ta'avor Me'al Avdecha. And so he says, Adonai, which is specific in the Tanakh. Adonai is plural. It means my lords in the plural, but this is a plural of formality, and it's used only for God Himself. Normally, when you're talking about someone as a master, you would say Adonai. But here is Adonai, and this is in the Tanakh used only for God. If I have found grace in your eyes, then don't pass over your servant. Don't pass by. Don't leave away. Okay, here comes another. Uh-oh. There we go. Shalom, Melech.
Shalom, Yaakov. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here.
Oh, yeah, it's nice today.
Well, beautiful in the sense that, yeah, I guess it is sunny, but just like a cool kind of, Mediterranean winter's day, all the fruits are kind of like, the winter fruits are starting to come out, like the lemons and the oranges. And it's just beautiful, It really is. I'm happy as a clam. And other than that, I'm really enjoying my studies. They're going really well. I just love every minute of it. It's just really interesting stuff and a lot of fun. And, the people I study with are great people. So enjoying myself, enjoying life as much as possible.
That's the key. That according to the Koheleth, that's one of the gifts of God, blessings of God, is to enjoy the work of your hand and
Yep, that's one of my favorite
the good
quotes.
Things. Yep,
that is one of my favorite quotes. It's Kohelet chapter 9, I believe. I'll bring it up. I always quote that. In fact, that's the quote that comes right after that is in my it's on my Facebook profile. It's kind of been one of my mantras for years. And my other mantra was when I was in junior high school, when I graduated in the 9th grade, I was asked to read a poem before the graduating class, and the poem I chose was "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. It speaks about taking, going on the road less taken, like not the usual path. And I think that and Kohelet, that's kind of been my inspiration throughout life.
yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's see what we have here. Let me bring that up because that's one of my favorite quotes in the entire Tanakh. The one you're talking about. Let's see here. Come on, Mr. Internet. I'm gonna name it. Instead of calling him Mr. Internet, I think I'll name him Bob. So, all right. Let's see here. I just love Kohelet. Is to me, as I've been saying for years, Kohelet is the greatest work of philosophy in human history. I really believe that.
It's really interesting. Every time I read it, I see something different.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
The guy, we assume Solomon wrote it.
Right.
It says Solomon wrote it, I think.
Yeah.
But whoever wrote it doesn't make any difference. The guy
I
was
really
brilliant.
hope it is Solomon. I think it is because of its level of wisdom.
Could be. Whoever it was brilliant. Whoever wrote it.
So it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 7, "Go, eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart." I'm just reading the English translation. "For God has already approved what you do." And I love that. It's like you don't have to worry because God's already taken care of it. He's already proved it. It's going to work out. "Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life and your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. That's it. That's that part.
Yep.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So we are in chapter 18.
Yeah.
And I just read verse 3.
Mm-hmm. So we're still dealing with Abraham.
Yep, this is the 3 men that come to see him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's a lot to say about that. So let's see here. Let me just bring it up. So we're in Genesis 18. The story of Abraham, just in a general sense, is just an amazing story. Someone who really didn't achieve self-actualization until very late in life. Was constantly wandering and wondering, and didn't really even know who he was until his son Isaac was born at the age of 99 or 100. I guess 100.
Yep.
And it's just amazing.
Interesting that about Abraham is it's in the Parashath WayYera. That's now I don't know exactly how many years it was between the creation and the time of Abraham, but we assume it's close to 2,000 years, give or take.
Yeah, they usually say 19. They usually say 1948, the same year as the state of Israel was born.
Yeah. And so what I find really interesting about the story of Abraham is that the first time in all these years, the first time we see the word angel, the word malach, appears in the narrative of Lech Lecha, and it happens first in the story of Hagar when she flees from Sarah. She's told go back. But now we have, this is the second time we see it. It says that, and it actually doesn't use the word malach here, I don't think. I think that's in the next chapter. But anyway, we just see that he's sitting at the opening of his tent, looks up and sees 3 men, and there's nothing really in that description to say that these men were anything special. But for some reason, Avram recognized who they were. What exactly it was, we don't know. But he went out to meet them, and he prostrated himself, and even refers to them as Adonai, which specifically is used only for the God of Israel in the Tanakh. But so this will be the second.
As I think you pointed out a long time ago, the word Yehovah is used interchangeably when speaking to angels, or to put it another way, except for Moshe, who spoke face to face to Yehovah. Whenever Yehovah speaks to somebody, it really means that he's speaking through an angel, right?
Yeah, and even then, it could still be
intermediary.
Argued. Yeah, it could still be argued.
The burning bush was not an angel, but the voice came out of the burning bush.
Well, it says it was the angel that appeared to him in the bush.
There we go.
Yeah, and also it says that the angel appeared in the column of fire. And so, there's, even though we see that it says that he spoke with God face to face, it could be assumed also that was also meant through this intermediary of an angel, but that's argumentative. You can argue either way. But the point is that
I think the idea with that statement in the end of Deuteronomy, that there never was another prophet like Moshe who spoke face to face as a friend speaks to his friend, means that there was no intermediary, and Moshe was the only person that achieved that. It doesn't mean that at the beginning of his career, or his shall I say what's the word they like to use, at the beginning of his ministry. I hate that word, right? At the beginning of his ministry, that doesn't mean that he spoke already to God face to face. He didn't. That was his first encounter with God. He didn't know him well enough yet. But over time, I guess, as the relationship developed, so to speak, then it got to the point that Moshe was speaking to Yehovah face to face with no intermediary, right? Because when he gets called let's say into the Ohel HaMoed, right, which is the tent of meeting, right? The tent of Moed is a meeting time or a meeting place or a meeting, basically. Oops. Hello?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yeah. When he gets called into the... Can you hear me okay, by the way, now?
Yeah, hear you fine.
When he gets called into the Ohel HaMoed, he's speaking directly with Yehovah there. It would seem. There's no indication that there's an angel or an intermediary speaking to him. That's the whole point of the tent. That's where, that's the powwow place for God and Moshe.
Yeah. And anyway, here it says we see 3 men, and there's nothing really in this narrative at this point that indicates anything special about them being other than 3 men. But there's something.
Let's see. What verse are we in, by the way?
Well, I just read 3, but this starts at verse 1.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Let me just catch up myself. I actually really love that interpretation that you gave. They have alon, or we have alon morre and alone mamre. And the question really is raised: are they related? That's really freaky. Yeah. It really is freaky. Yeah. And what's the connection between that and rebelliousness, if there is such a connection? Or maybe it's just a weird coincidence. Maybe these are just, ancient place names. But I really love that interpretation. It's really gave me food for thought. So thank you. Okay, well, I mean, at this point, he still doesn't, right, like you said, he just sees 3 visitors. So, okay. He's going to invite any 3 visitors into his house.
But he's not going to call any 3 visitors Adonai.
Of course he will.
No.
Of course he will.
He's not
Adonai just means my
Adonai. No.
Of course,
Adonai is... No, it doesn't.
Adonai is just the word plural.
Adonai is never used for anything other than the God of Israel.
Well, I mean, here it's a plural. It's the plural smichut. It's just the plural. What do they call it? The smichut in English. The plural of Adonim. Yeah, I'm sorry, not the smichut. It's the plural. It's the plural genitive for Adonim. That's all that's going on here.
Yeah, the plural.
My masters.
Adonai is never used anywhere except for the God of Israel.
Well, it is here because we have to get clear.
That's what I'm getting at. But now we see that one of these 3 men is identified as the God of Israel.
Yes, but that's only afterwards when they identify themselves or when they are identified. Here, I don't think there's any implication of the word Adonai.
They never identify themselves. They never identify who they are. Abraham just lifts up his eyes. He sees these 3 men, and then we have this title used, Adonai. Now, that's what I'm getting at. There's nothing at this point that distinguishes these 3 men, but there must have been something. It has to be something by which Abraham would know. Now, and this is another point I'm getting at. This is only the second time in the story, or actually in the Tanakh. This is only the second time where we have the messengers, the divine messengers, even being spoken of, and this is the second instance here.
Yes, but I'm going to have to disagree with your interpretation. I think that it just means it's the genitive plural of Adon, and it's very common throughout the Tanakh for someone to call another person Adon, Adoni, Adoni, Adoni. Even in modern Hebrew, if you want to say, excuse me,
is singular.
That's right. Adoni, but here there are 3 of them. What else should he call him?
Well, you're right. It would be Adonai. The point is the word Adonai. If you want to say this is just talking about that he's throwing that title around for anybody, that's fine. But this will be the only instance in the entire Tanakh where it's done that way.
Okay. Well, it's the first time for everything, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not the first time. It's the only time. Well, it is
an only time for
as well.
I don't think there's anything other going on here than just saying my masters. It's very common for one person to call another person master. As I was saying, even in modern Israel, if you want to say, "Excuse me, sir," you say "Slicha, Adoni, Adoni, Adoni." Okay. In fairness to your point of view, it would be very strange. It would be very strange if you have three people there to say "Slicha, Adonai," because people would interpret that as saying God. So I guess maybe you have a point, but I personally don't think that's what's going on.
One thing I've made a point of before when we talk about Adonai and Adoni, they're spelled identically. Okay, they're spelled identically. They're vocalized different. That's it.
Right.
Now, throughout the Tanakh, whenever you use what's called the formal plural, plurals are not always plural numerically. It's plural in what's called formality. That means when you're speaking to someone who's in a higher position, as far as dignity, respect, or whatever you want to call it, then you use the plural. And for instance, Abraham, when it talks about him in the as the master, it's used in the plural. It's Adonav, which is the plural.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, I've made a point of saying that it could be that in other places, because why would you use the plural for his or their in the plural, and not my in the plural as well? Like you're saying, Adonai, that would just be a respectful title of someone in a higher position. And but you could, just like people talk about the emendations of the scribes, where they change certain things, if you want to believe in that, then they could have vocalized those places where it might have been Adonai to Adoni, just to keep it from any hint of what people might accuse of being idolatry or whatever.
Perhaps.
But anyway, the point is, we don't see anything.
Let's go to my boy. Let's
to identify that.
Let's go to my boy Robert Alter and see what he has to say. Out of curiosity, just 1 second here. I gotta find him because he's good, as I always point out. Jeez, what a stick that. Nook is hiding like a crook. Nook. There we go. Nookazon came up on Wikipedia is a fan-made website.
While you're looking that
2020
while you're looking that up, there's a question.
Yeah, go.
It says, even if what Melech was saying is the case, what was so special about these men? And that's the point I'm getting at, is that up to this point, we don't see anything. There's nothing in the narrative at this point which would distinguish these guys other than being just three guys that have to pop up. And Abraham's being a really good host.
Well, I'm agreeing with you 100%. I don't think there is anything that's distinguishing them from anywhere else, from anyone else at this point. Abraham is just being a good host. He sees three people walking in the desert, and hey Siri, find Nook.
Find Nookie.
Says,
find Nook.
Nook, and I wanted Nook. Nook is the Barnes and Noble reading app. That's why I have my but it says Siri, find milk. Siri thought I said milk. I can't even find Nook. Okay, forget it. I'll get it later. So, at any rate, I think that's exactly the point. They're just walking. Abraham is just being a good host, as he would to anyone. He doesn't know who these people were, just as Samson's father, when he was out with the sheep, I believe,
Yeah.
just an angel appeared to him,
Manoah.
and he didn't know. Yeah, and Manoah, yeah, exactly. And in the book of Judges, chapter 12, approximately, he did not know who this a person was until it was revealed. I mean, that's the way it
We're about to
seems
see
to
the
work.
same thing with
So,
Lot in the next chapter.
That's right. Yep. Okay. So, verse 3, Yomer Adonai im matzati chayin ba'einecha al na ta'avor me'al avdecha. Okay, I still disagree with you, but I would like to give you fuel for your argument, even though I don't think it's a significant piece of evidence, because we know how the Torah plays games with gender and number. But it does say here, which is the singular, second person plural. I'm sorry, second person future, not the plural. Right?
Mm-hmm. But in the next verse, it goes into the plural.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, I didn't think it was a very good piece of evidence, but I thought I'd throw you that bone.
Yeah, but no matter how you look at it, it's three men. He's not talking. He's not. It doesn't say that he's singling one person of the three
Right.
out. In fact, in the next verse that we're about to read, it's clear that he's talking to all three of them as a group.
Right.
Because it says specifically, "Yukachna me'at mayim v'rachasu raglechem v'hishanu tahat ha'etz." It says, "Let then a little bit of water be taken, wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree." And it's also, aside from the na, where it says "Yukachna," the rest of it is in the imperative, which always seems a little bit strange when you think that he's speaking to the creator of the universe with imperatives instead of it using the polite form, which would always have the imperfect with the na. But anyway, those are all imperatives, and they're also in the plural. And now we have the cohortative. وإخاء patlechem وصعدوا لبخم أحر تعبروا كي ألقين عبارتهم على عبدهم ويؤمروا كين تعسي كأشر دبارته. And so it says, I would like to have a little bit of, or a morsel of bread. And wasa'adu libachim means basically to refresh your hearts. Afterwards, you can pass by. Ki ala kain abartim, because it was for this very reason that you passed by your servant. And now it's in the plural. And they all answered in unison. Yomiru. Let it be done according to your word. So it's clear that he's not singling any one of them out. He's talking to all three of them together.
Yep. Go on. I'm just trying to do something very quickly here.
So verse 6. ويمحر أبراهام هؤلاء إلى سراء ويومر محري شلو سئيم كماخ سولت لوشي وعسي أغوث. And so he hurried. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah, and he says, quickly, Shiroseim Kimach, so let's need 3 seah of grain, finely ground grain, and make some cakes. وإلى بقار رات أبراهام ويقاخ بن بقار رخ وطوف ويتين إلى حنار ويماهر لعصوت أوثو. And to the herds, Abraham ran, and he took one of the herd that was soft and good, or however you want to look at it, and he gave it to the young man, and he quickly prepared it. And that's another instance where we have the word la'asov, which is asan. We talked about that in Bereshit, where when it says "Wayya Elohim," doesn't always mean he made it brand new at that point, but could mean that he prepared something that was already there. And we see that here.
Don't mind me. I'm just trying to bring up something.
He prepared the young bull or whatever it was he took. ويقح حمعاء وخناف وبن حبقار أشر عصا ويتين لفنيهم وهو عميد عليهم تحت حعيت ويخلو. And so he took cream and milk and the young bull, which he prepared, and he set it before them. And as he was standing above them under the tree, and they ate. And so here is where we get the idea that you can't have meat and dairy, because God disapproves of that.
I'll get to that one in a second, but hold on one second here. I just want to see my Lord.
Oh, you're still reading about the Adonai?
Yeah, so here's what Robert Alter says, okay? My Lord, the Masoretic text vocalizes this term of courtly address to read my lords in consonance with the appearance of three visitors, but the vocative terms that follow in this verse are in the singular, and it is only in verse 4 that Abraham switches to plural verbs. Rashi plausibly suggests that Abraham initially addresses himself to the greatest of the three, as verses 10 and 13 to 15 make clear that greatest one is God himself, who will tarry to speak with Abraham, while the two human seeming angels of destruction who accompany him head down to the cities of the plain. So Robert Alter actually seems to tend to agree with you.
Well, no matter how, we see this after the fact. We see this in the narrative as a whole. But if we look at it chronologically, there's nothing that tells Abraham in the narrative that we have. There's no clue that says, "Oh, here's God. He appeared to Abraham." We don't see that, even though it says that God appeared to him. We know that because it's being told to us, right? But from the point of view of Abraham, he's sitting in this tent. He just sees three men, and he's being a gracious host, like he would normally be. So, how would one understand it at this point? It would be that he was just entertaining three men that happened upon him in the wilderness, and it just so happened that they were divine visitors.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I just got distracted again. Okay, so we are in what verse are we in now? Now I'm back on track.
We are now in verse 9.
9. Okay. Okie dokie. יאמרו אליו, איה שרה אשתך, ויאמר, הנה באוהל. Okay.
Yeah, but I just want to make a comment on verse 8. There's always been a problem with the very last part of the verse, where it says, who are made عليهم تحت ha'etz, in that if you can imagine the creator of the universe appearing to a man, and then he's sitting under a tree with his two companions, and Abraham just gave him some meat with some dairy products, which God absolutely hates and forbids later on in the Torah. You can't eat those two together.
Mm-hmm. Well, what the rabbis used to teach us, is that look, he's first eating the dairy, and then he's eating the meat, so it's okay, because obviously he waited a half an hour after the chema and the chalav before he ate the bakar. That's, I kid you not. I wish I was making that up, but that's literally what they taught us in yeshiva. And then the other thing that we once learned, I kid you not, I was at a yeshiva that was a breakaway yeshiva from Hakhams Melech, started by one of Hakhams Melech's rabbis. And he was giving a shiur, and he spent about, I'd say, 15 to 20 minutes explaining how this is possible, the deep mystery of how it's possible that milk and meat could be eaten together. Okay, and are you ready for the deep mystery?
Yeah.
Yaakov, you ready? Audience, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's see it. Let's see a show of hands, because I'm going to reveal one of the deepest mysteries ever of the entire universe, as revealed to me by Rav. I won't say his last name, but the guy is obviously an idiot at yeshiva, whatever. Okay, this is a secret he told me. This is not a regular cow.
What?
Did you know that? That's right. Abraham did not just take a regular cow from the flocks. What he did is he looked into Sefer HaYetzirah, the ancient book of Kabbalah, the ancient book of Jewish mysticism from the time of Moses, passed down by Moses himself, and he saw in that book how to create a cow out of thin air, the same way that God created animals on the sixth day. And Abraham, using his special powers, created a special cow. And since this cow was not born to a mother cow, sound familiar? Then it was not considered real meat, and therefore it could be eaten together with the dairy, so everything is okay.
You know, that sounds really cool, but it actually says here that it says, well, Arat Abraham. And so it doesn't say anything about opening a book. It says he went to the herd, to the herd. And he took
that was the trick. That was the trick. But I had another answer for him, which was, it doesn't say a bakar, it says ben bakar. The rabbi didn't exactly know how to answer that one. Ben bakar means the son of Abakar. Anyway, that is literally what I spent 20 minutes of my life learning in some yeshiva a long time ago. That's how yeshivas spend their days. It was just, yeah.
There's
Same kind of thing, you know?
Anyhow. There's lots we could say on that, but the point I wanted to draw is that you have the creator of the universe sitting under a tree, okay, with Abraham standing over him. And the rabbis always had lots of problems with that, and they considered that to be an act of arrogance. I think they actually translate it differently in most rabbinic English translations. I don't know about other translations, but they don't translate it as Abraham was standing there standing over God. So where are we? Verse 10.
Okay. Well, aren't you glad I revealed that secret to you, Yaakov?
I don't know what I would have ever done if I hadn't learned that today. I think
you would have thought that Abraham disobeyed the Torah. You would have thought that he disobeyed the Torah, and that, like a bad Jew, he ate milk and meat together. Yeah. See? That's what you would have thought.
Perhaps.
But now you know better.
So verse where are we? Verse 9, وَيُمَرُوا إِلَىٰ أَيِّ Sarah Ishtaka, and so they said to him, where is Sarah your wife? وَيُمَرْ حِينَ بَأُهَلْ, and he says, she is here in the tent.
Mm-hmm.
ويومر شوف أشوف إليها كأيت حياة وحين ذين لسرى إشتخى والسرى شمعت بثخ أهل وهو أخراف. And he says, I will certainly return to you كأيت حياة, which means at the time of life.
Yeah. Well, literally, they always translate this as this time next year. But I've never understood where they get that from exactly, except maybe from context. I mean, literally what it means is, as you said, haya, at a living time or at an alive time.
Yeah.
But the idiom there is always translated as at this time next year. So I don't know if you have any insight as to why that's the case. I don't. I've just always accepted the translation because what else am I going to do?
The birth of Yitzhak is a miracle, okay? And we often consider miracles as a visitation of God. And so when it says, I will return to you, ka'id chaya, which means at the time of life, which means that God would visit Sarah at that time when she conceived. And that's the way I look at it. At the time of conception,
my point is... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
My point is this
I'm
phrase,
returning to you at the time of life. Yeah.
Yes, but it's used many times throughout the Tanakh, and it's not always referring to giving birth. This is a common phrase throughout the Tanakh. And so, I don't know. Robert Alter translates it as, I will surely return to you at this very season. At this very season. That's plausible. And look, the son shall Sarah your wife have. So, I don't know. Okay, I guess that makes sense. I actually like Robert Alter's answer this time. Like at this very season, this living season, this living time, this same time. Okay. All right. Anyway, Sarah ben. Okay. All right. Sarah lemor, and Sarah rejected this. Lemor lo tzachati. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped. Yomer Yoa Avraham Lama ze. Okay. What? I'm skipping. Yomer Shuvas. Okay. There we go. ושרה שומעת פתח האוהל והוא אחריו. So Sarah has heard this from the opening of the tent. והוא אחריו. And so he is behind him. Yeah.
I just want to mention this. There's only two places in the Tanakh where this phrase "Eit Chaya" is used. Here in the story that we're reading now, and also in 2 Kings chapter 4, where it talks about Elisha promising the woman a son, who happened to be a widow, I think.
I'm pretty sure there are more, but maybe it doesn't use Chaya. Maybe it uses a similar phrase.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I know a specific place where there would be. I don't know. I can't think of it offhand. But okay. All right. If that's the case, then maybe it does. Haya. I'm not sure. All right. V'hine ben Sarah v'ishtecha v'Sarah shomat petach mohed v'hu acharav. So Sarah hears it from the opening of the tent. Okay. Which was behind them. That's how Robert Alter translates it. Anyway, because who acharav, who, and literally, and it or he was behind him. So who is behind whom? I also never understood this one. But according to Robert Alter, he seems to be saying that it means the tent. Who refers to the ohel acharav, and the tent was behind him. Okay. Perhaps. Okay. All right, verse 11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jacob, you want to take it?
وأبراهام وسارة زكنين بائين بيامين خدل לחיות לשרי أورח כנשים. And Abraham and Sarah were old, well gone or well come in years or in days, which means they were old.
Mm-hmm.
And the ways of women had already left off from Sarah.
Meaning that's a clear reference, obviously, to.
Yeah, she was already past the age of menopause or whatever. She stopped
She was
having her menstrual cycle.
Yeah, post-menopausal. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
وتضحك
Verse 12.
سارة.
Yep.
وتضحك سارة بكربه لمور آخر بلوفي حيث لي عيدنا وأدوني زاخين. And so Sarah laughed within herself, and she says, after this time is already no longer with me, shall it be for me idna, which would be an idin. This is like a pleasure or something. And even though my Lord Adoni is old.
Mm-hmm. So a couple things. So this is the first time we see laughter, right? And we know the son is going to be named Yitzhak. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see laughter associated with him in a number of different contexts, right? Both before he's born and after he's born. Okay.
Yep.
And we see once again that this is often the way the Torah works, that the names of places or people are given based on a number of different things. So here we have Sarah's laughing, okay? And she's laughing in disbelief. After Yitzhak is born, then there's a phrase, we'll get to it, something like Sarah or other women will laugh, or other women will laugh when they see that Sarah has born a son. So there she's laughing in joy in a certain sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is pay attention to how many times and where the word litzchok, which means to laugh, comes up in the story of the birth of Yitzchak. So here's number 1 in verse 12. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll take verse 13. Wayomer Yehovah el Avraham lama zeh tzachakta Sarah lemor ha'af unam eled v'ani zakanti. And Yehovah, this angel, spoke to Avraham, or said to Avraham, Lama zeh tzachaka Sarah? Why did Sarah laugh in this way? Lemor ha'af unam eled v'ani zakanti, saying, can I really give birth? Can I really seriously give birth after I've already become old? Verse 14, Hayipale mi Yehovah davar? Is anything impossible for God? So this is the angel still speaking, saying, well, saying to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Saying I can't, and saying she can't give birth. Is there anything impossible for God? La mo'ed למועד אשוב אליך כעת חיה לשרה ולשרה בן. Okay, so and here we have כעת חיה again, but of course it's referring to the same incident. מאו הדבר למועד אשוב. So here's another way of saying למועד. מועד means again that it's this time, right? Meaning this time next year, because holidays in the Torah are called the mo'adim, right? And the Mo'adim occur once a year, so we already have evidence that when it says La Mo'ed, it means this time, and we can fill in parentheses next year. So at this time, in parentheses next year, Ashuv Elecha, I will return to you. The angel says, K'et Chaya, there's that same phrase again, at this very season, or as Yaakov says, at the time of giving birth, Sarah ben, and Sarah will have a son. Verse 15, V'tikachesh Sarah lemor lo tzachakti. And Sarah said, no, I didn't laugh. Ki yara, because she feared. V'yomer, lo, ki tzachakt. Don't lie to God. No lying to the big guy. We saw you. Don't say you didn't laugh. But again, so we have laughter mentioned. Let's even count the number of times, right? So it's mentioned in verse 12 once. It's mentioned in verse 13. So it's twice. Of course, all talking about the same incident, but we can count the incidents as well as the number of times the word appears. It's mentioned in verse 15, still pretty much the same incident twice. So we have 4 times that the word litzchok, to laugh, is mentioned. All right. Okay. And now we get to the true fire and brimstone of the Torah. Quite literally. All right, go Yaakov, take it away.
So, 16, we have ويقوم משם האנשים וישקפו על פני סדום ואברהם הולך עמם לשלחם. And so they stood up from, the men stood up from there, and they gazed towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to see them off, which means basically to send them away. Which also sounds really weird when you think about how it's said, to send them away.
Well, I think it means in the sense of to accompany them.
Yeah, he was seeing them off. Is basically all he was saying. It just sounds
to see them off, exactly.
Really, sounds really weird the way.
There is again, I don't know exactly where it comes from, the Jewish sources, but in the rabbinical sources, but there is a rabbinical source that we learned again in yeshiva, and that pretty much everyone, at least everyone religious, does it in Israel, which is when a guest leaves your house, you're supposed to accompany them to the door. You don't just sit at the couch and like they do in Americans. Okay, and the guest says, "Okay, I have to go." So, all right, bye. Thanks for coming. You walk them over to the door.
We always not only accompanied them to the door, but we went outside to the car. And
right,
I always remembered my father, and I do this myself. My father would stand there and watch them leave. He wouldn't turn to go back inside until he no longer saw them or the car. That's one of the things I always remember when I read verses like this. It's how my father did that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to always try to do that too. Except if you have an annoying guest, I would just say, "All right, just goodbye, thanks for coming, and don't let the door hit your ass on the way out." All right. Nothing like Torah humor.
Verse 17. By
the way, Yaakov, did I ever let you know I'm actually a licensed stand-up comedian?
No, you didn't. I didn't know you had to be licensed.
I did comedy courses in Jerusalem. I'm serious. And I got my license, my certificate for comedy, and then I was on stage a couple of times. So I always tell people that because I'm a licensed stand-up comedian, that everyone is required to laugh at all of my jokes by law.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then my ex-wife, Rivka, used to say to me, no, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that if you don't tell a good joke, then it's death penalty. Since you're a licensed
we pay you with tomato sauce.
Exactly. All right. Okay. So, but there are a couple of serious things that I would like to say here, which is v'yashkifu. One of my projects one day is to do what this guy, what is his name again? I can't remember his name, but he tries to relate modern English words in particular, back to ancient Hebrew words. Okay, And honestly, I don't think he does a very good job. He does a very shoddy job. He does a lot of
I think it's called
speculation without a
Edenics or
lot of
something
solid
like that.
research. He calls it Edenics eventually. Yeah, back in the day, it was called. He just wrote a book called The Word. I think his name is Aaron Moses or something like that. Aaron Moshe.
I don't remember his name. I know who you're talking about. I don't
Yeah,
remember his name.
Edenics. Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe he's solidified his game, but back then it was just a lot of speculation. Here, I'm just going to bring it up 1 second, see what his name is again. Oh, okay. Wow, it's got a nice jet airplane on the front of his page. Denix. Isaac Moseson. Isaac Moseson. That's his name.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I hope he's tightened up his game because he had a lot of good ideas, but the thing is, it was a lot of speculation. Okay, he would just like jump to conclusions without having any solid proof of the etymology. But and maybe we can have a little discussion about etymology of modern Western languages, because you and I know both strongly agree on this and agree that that the Indo-European myth is basically a lot of, the Indo-European reconstructed proto-language is basically a lot of, baloney.
Garbage.
Yeah. But here, Yashkifu, okay, I have a suspicion that I would like to prove, if I have the time, that that's related to the modern English word scope.
Yeah. Yeah. It means to look at something. Scope.
Right. No, scope.
And that's where you get the word skeptical or skeptic. Is someone who actually looks at something again, like, hey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, it certainly comes through the Latin, but I think then it goes back to the Greek.
Scopus is
if
Greek.
I'm not mistaken. Once you get back to the Greek, you're already pretty close to the Middle East, and that's a common path that words into modern Romance languages, of which English is a modern Romance language because specifically of the influence of French from the Norman invasions of 1077, something like that. I'd have to ask one of my British friends. They know all these stupid dates. But at any rate, so I mean, English has a lot of Romance roots in it. The Romance roots can all be traced, not all, can mostly be traced back to Latin. From Latin, many of those roots can be traced back to Greek. And once we get back to Greek, we're already talking about a culture that had contact with Semitic languages. Greece is right there in the fray of the Middle East. So a lot of Greek words, if you can trace it back to Greek, then it's not too far of a jump to trace it from there back to Aramaic, or back to Phoenician, or back to Hebrew, or even back to Arabic in some cases, although obviously Arabic's a later language. But so just out of curiosity, let me look up the word microscope and see what etymology they give for that, and see if they trace it back to Greek.
Yeah, it's Greek from micron, which means small, and scope, which means to see.
Right. So let's see scope, all definitions, scope, and yep, Greek. So it came through modern Latin, scopium, and to look at from Greek, scopein. Okay. So now we're already back to Greek, and we have a word scopein, and there it's not too far of a jump at all to say that we can trace that back to lashkif, which is the word we have here, right?
Yeah. That's the same thing I was talking about with the word cell. The English word cell that we use for the cells of our body comes from the Latin cella, which, in my opinion, comes from the Hebrew selah. When you read in Ezekiel the description of the Mikdash, it talks about Selah el Selah, and Rashi made a really interesting comment there where he says he translates Selah el Selah as Ta el Ta, and he says that there are three words that are synonyms: Selah, Ta, and another word I can't remember what it is, but it was used in the Book of the Kings and Chronicles where they talk about the same thing, which means basically a chamber. And the reason why the human cell is called a cell today is because the first person who actually was able to view a cell under a microscope remarked how they looked like little celli, which is the Latin for cells. They were where the monks would live. These little cubicles, or whatever you want to call them. And so that's how the modern cell, while you have a cell for the cells of your body, which is the same word for the prison cell. Anyway, but you're right. There's lots of words that we're going to find that come from a Semitic root.
Absolutely, and it is a hatred of the Torah, and by extension, a hatred of God. Let me just post this in here. 1 second here. So I do this. Oh, it's not working. There we go. So I don't know if you want to put that up on the screen. I'm interested.
Yeah, I'll show that for a minute. So there's your etymology of scope.
Yeah, it's not really necessary. I just wanted to see my comment go up on the screen.
Scopeo means I see.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? Yeah. So this it is this. It's through a lack of wanting to trace back words to Semitic languages because of anti-Semitism, and I mean that in the more pure form of maybe just European arrogance of thinking, oh, we don't want to trace our words back to those lowly Middle Eastern camel effers or something like that. We would rather trace it back to some more lofty language known as Proto-Indo-European that came from ostensibly Iran,
Aryanism.
Perhaps India, perhaps. Yeah, Aryanism, exactly. So
and
so
that's
it
actually
is,
the
in a
name
sense, a form of.
Iran. Iran is actually where you get the word Aryan from.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, the Aryans were one of the tribes that migrated into Iranian, what is today Persian territory, and they became a major tribe in the area, and that's exactly where you get the name Iran from. There is a movie. The Nazis actually were very interested in their Iranian roots, and they sent a lot of researchers back to Iran, and I think back to India as well, to try to search out their roots, because they were hyper nationalists, right? They were trying to return to their original Teutonic roots, which they believed came from migrations, right? There were these migrations from from Persia, from northern India, out towards Central Europe, and they believed that their ultimate roots lie back in Iran and northern India. So the Nazis were quite interested. In fact, the swastika that they used is, I don't know if it's
Indian.
it was an Aryan symbol, but it's a symbol. It's used also by the Indians, also by the Hindus, but not only by the Hindus. It's used by a number of different cultures in that area. I don't remember all the details, but that's a common symbol that is used in that area. You'll see it on in Hindu temples sometimes, or in other temples, from religions around that area. I think in Hindu temples you'll see it. I don't remember all the details, so but basically that symbol represents the swastika represents the swirling sun. It's basically supposed to be a sun. Those are supposed to be the rays of the sun, and it's supposed to be like swirling. And so that this is exactly where they got the symbol from. And they were very into studying these ancient runes, RUNE, runic exploration of runic exploration of their ancient ways. But there was a movie, I think it was called 7 Years in Tibet, something. No, 7 Years.
Oh, with Brad Pitt.
7 Years in Tibet. Hold on 1 second. Oh, was it with Brad Pitt?
I think so.
Okay. So I'll just read it very quickly. The 7 Years in Tibet is a 1997 American biographical war drama based on the 1952 book of the same name. The book was written by Austrian mountaineer Heinrich Harrer on his experiences in Tibet between 1939 and 1951 during World War II, the interim period, and the Chinese blah, blah, blah. In the story, Austrians Heinrich Harrer, Brad Pitt, and Peter Aufschneider are mountaineering in India in an area that is now whatever, blah, blah, blah. World War II begins, blah, blah, blah. While in Tibet, after initially being ordered to return to India, they were welcomed to the holy city of Lhasa. Blah, 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 blah. I can't remember. Maybe I'm thinking about a different movie. Or maybe I'm not. Anyway, we got too far off track. But basically, the Nazis were interested in Iran because they saw that as their original roots, and that's exactly where they claim that this is the territory for this Proto-Indo-European language. The source of it, they claim, is basically that same area, Iran, northern India, which they see as their ultimate, original homeland. And so they are, therefore, to unwind and get back to what we were talking about, they are literally anti-Semitic in the sense that they don't want to trace back through Latin, Greek, and then start moving down the Eastern Mediterranean towards the Middle East, where you have a bunch of, low life, sand. I won't even say the word, but I'm saying it from their point of view. But you guys maybe know what I'm talking about. But in their views, these low life Middle Easterners are not to be, we're not going to trace our lofty European culture back to them. We're going to trace our lofty European culture back to, our original roots of Iran and northern India. And so therefore they refuse to accept the fact that many many Romance language and Germanic and words, and therefore English, which is a mix of Germanic and Romance, a mix of Germanic languages, and French, basically, from those Norman invasions, actually can trace many of their words back to Semitic languages. So that's anti-Semitism, not anti-Judaism, not anti-Jewishism, anti-Semitism in its purest form. Anyway, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, so verse 17. Adonai Amar Hamakase Ani Abraham Asher Ani Ose. And so Adonai says, shall I hide from Abraham that which I am doing? Abraham Hayu Yihye Lekul Gadol. Wa'atzum Wa'nivrachu Bo Kul Goye Ha'aretz. Hang on, I gotta get this line out from in front of me. And Abraham, he shall be a great nation and very powerful, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed because of him, or in him, or by him. Come on, get it.
Mm-hmm. So now I am debating whether I should even say this, but no, I'm not going to go there. Forget it. But I would like to say that, as you always point out, Yaakov, that and it says Vi Avraham Hayo Yihye, right? So the common way to translate it, and Abraham will be, a great and giant nation. But the V, as we know, can represent many different things, and here, and I'm not blaming you because I always do that as I'm doing translations, but really it expresses more the idea of insofar as, or while knowing that Abraham will be, right? So it just shows the complexity of this word, of this V conjunction, that is much more than and. It can be and, it could be or, and it could express a lot more than that as well. And here it expresses, while knowing the fact that Abraham will certainly be, insofar as Abraham will certainly be a great nation.
Yep. And you have the emphatic form, Hayo Yihye. This is the infinitive and the imperfect. And that's always emphatic.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then, okay, I will mention it. So there's some, dipshit that, runs around with the Christians who says that this word, nivrhubo, his new interpretation is that nivrahu means that the other nations will become part of Israel. So, because nivrahu, he says, comes from berech, which means a knee, right? So nivrach, he says, means bent. And then he brings some verse, which I can't remember where it is, where you're bending the other people into the nation of Israel. So he actually uses this as justification to go around and mass convert everyone to Judaism. And thank God he's got the KJU.
And God himself is the primal convert, because we always say Baruch Atah Adonai, right? Oh man, what an idiot.
Very good. Very good. Yes, but thank God he's got the KJU standing at his ready. You know, just like the Proud Boys for Donald Trump. You know, stand back and stand by. And the KJU is ready to charge you $3,000 to be bent into Israel. So
33,000 or 3,300.
Politics for the day. I think I said 3,000, but maybe they raised the price because times are tough.
Yeah.
You know,
anyway,
gotta bring in those greenbacks. Gotta clock those dollars. All right.
Anyhow,
you know, since the community itself is falling apart, they got to get money from somewhere. You know?
Yeah, that's definitely not the case.
All right. Anyway, let's go on.
Yeah. So verse, where are we? 19.
19.
Ki yadati lima'an asher yitzaweh et banav ואת ביתו אחריו, ושמרו דרך אדוני לעשות צדקה ומשפט למען הביא אדוני על אברהם את אשר דיבר אליו. Because I know him. למען אשר יצווה את בניו. In that, the word lima'an always indicates a conditional. Means as a result of somebody doing something happened. Normally is that's the condition. He will command his sons and his house after him, and they shall keep the path of God. And what is the path of God? What is the Derech Adonai? We're about to learn it for the first time. Le'asot sadaqah u'mishpat. To do sadaqah, which means justice, and mishpat, which is also justice in your dealings, how you deal with people. And we see that
say justice and fair. You could say justice and fair judgment, or something like that. Mishpat is judgment, right?
Yep. And we see this also, I think it's in Amos. He says, and what, O man, does your God require from you? But to love justice and mercy and walking humbly with your God. And that's the Derech Adonai. Okay. And that's what the Torah is based upon. It's very, very emphatic from the beginning of the Torah to the end of the Torah of the justice and righteousness of God, and that there's no inequity, which means there's no imbalance. He's fair across the board, and that's why we're held to that requirement. We have to be the same way. And it
points out again the difference between rabbinical Judaism and, I won't even say Karaite Judaism, and Tanakh and Torah, where rabbinical Judaism has such an emphasis on ritual and rituals that have nothing to do with the Torah, for that matter. And the Tanakh is always emphasizing tzedakah, mishpat, right? And kindness and mercy and all these other attributes. But it's so if this were really written by the rabbis, it would say something like Shamru derech Yehovah la'asot hanachat tefillin baboker v'kriyat shema pa'amayim layom. Okay, to make sure you put on your tefillin, your phylacteries in the morning, and say the Shema twice a day, because that's ritualistic behavior that the rabbis have an emphasis on. I would also like to bring this point home that the rabbinical, if you say the word tzedakah to somebody in modern Israel, do you know what what the meaning of that word is? It doesn't mean justice.
Charity or something like that.
Yeah.
What
Money.
Money.
Show me the money.
Yeah.
It means give me money. Okay.
Yep.
So the rabbis have done something here disgusting. Okay. They will translate wherever you see the word tzedakah in the Tanakh, they will generally translate it as giving charity. So they have associated or they've taken away the meaning of the word tzedakah as justice and replaced it with the meaning of giving money. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are constantly telling people that they have to give money. It's one of the ways they raise money by basically replacing the meaning of this word to donations of money. They tzedakah, literally in modern Hebrew, coming from the rabbinical understanding, the rabbinical definition, literally means give money. It means donate charity. That's what it means. There's nothing to do with justice.
Yeah, and one thing too, the word sadak also has to do with vindication. It means, in fact, we see this in the Torah later, where it says, "You shall judge the guilty guilty and the innocent innocent," and that is a part of it. You have to stand up for those things that are right. It's not just saying, "Oh, well, that's true." You actually have to defend those things that are right and that are just, because, like the old proverb. I don't even know where this proverb comes from. It says, "For the only thing that's required for evil to succeed in the world, is for good men to be silent and do nothing."
Definitely.
And so by doing nothing, we are actually aiding the unjust. And in Torah, we're not allowed to do that. You can't sit by. In fact, one of the things that the proverb, the Mishlei of Solomon, says that God hates is that you stand by innocent blood. And that's
Al tamod b'dam recha. It's in the Torah. Don't stand by on your brother's blood, or don't
right.
don't stand. Don't stand idle upon your brother's blood. Meaning, if you see your brother being hurt or injured, then you have to take action. It's a Torah commandment.
And that's a part of tzedakah. That doesn't just mean to give charity, as most people interpret it today, but it means to be just, and not only to be just in the way you act, but to defend it also. You have to defend that quality. Anyway, the next part of this verse is Lima'an Havi Adonai al Avraham et Asher Diber Alav, so that Adonai may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken. What was it that he spoke? That was at the very beginning. He says, "I will make your name great. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. I'll make you a great nation." And he actually commanded. I explained when we went through Parashath WayYera, where it says WayYera, that means be a blessing. He's commanded to be a blessing. It's not all those always normally translated as "and you shall be a blessing." It's not. It's a little bit more emphatic than that.
And of course, the big promise, aside from Abraham having a son of his through Sarah of his own flesh and blood, is of course the promise of the land of Israel. That's probably most what it's referring to here.
Yeah, we just read that the end of Parashat Lech Lecha, where he says, "I'm gonna," and your children. He says, "Look," and we understand that because when it talks about the reward that Avram had, this 318 men that he had. These guys weren't just the run-of-your-mill, everyday camel herder. These guys were 318 men who destroyed the combined armies of 5 kings of the east, who just walked through Canaan and took everything from these people. So Avram and these 318 men went against these 5 kings and took them out and brought all that back. And, you know, of course, the different kings one said, hey, give us the people, you take the wealth for yourself. And he said, no, unless any one of you say, I made Abraham rich. And so God tells him, look, your rewards will be without being able to be counted, and it'll be innumerable. And so this is a part of that.
Yep.
So we are now in verse 20. ويومر أدوناي زعقات سدوم وعمورة كي ربا وحتاثم كي كابتا مئوت.
And I always like to replace. I'm sorry.
So Adonai says, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah, it is great, and their sin has become exceedingly great.
And I always like to replace this with a Yomer Yehovah Ta'akat New York Ki Rabba Chashatam Ki Kavda Me'od. Okay.
You know, there is an old saying that New York is identified as Babylon, right? Don't they call that Babylon or something?
As Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Thankful that I'm not in that place. Okay, yeah. Ve'erdana, ve'erre. Okay, good, Yaakov, because I spoke too much before, so your turn.
Verse 21. Erdana wa ir'e hakisa'akata haba'a elai asu kala wa'imlo eida. He says, because I'm wanting to come down and I would like to see. Is it like the cry that is coming to me? Have they done that completely? And if not, I shall know. I would like to know. These are all what's called cohortes.
Yeah, that's a strange.
Go ahead. Strange what?
One second. Erdana ve'ereki ki ha ki etzakata haba elai asu kala. So what is this word kala? You know,
kala is complete.
Okay, from but it's just a strange use of the word right here. Right?
Is it completely done? Have they done it completely? Or which means are they completely wicked or
Right, asukala. Okay, one second. I just want to go to Robert Alter for 1 second here and see what he has to say. They have dealt destruction.
I think
let me go down and see whether, as the outcry that has come to me, they have dealt destruction. And if not, I shall know. So that's interesting translation. I'd like to explain where he's getting that from.
Well, you use the same verb when he says, I will completely destroy them. When God is telling the Israelites, look, you know, if you don't keep the Torah and so forth, I will completely destroy you. They use the same verb, which means basically I'm going to finish you. That's basically what he's saying. You'll be finished.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. And so here, Robert Alter's interpretation of that is, because it is a very strange phraseology. So if they have done kala, if they have done destruction, or if they've done complete destruction, right? It comes from the root kol, which means all or everything, as you mentioned. But
I would think it would be an
kala means to
adverb
completely
here.
destroy.
Yeah.
It could be, yeah. It could be.
It's modifying the
Keep it in
verb.
mind,
It's
Hebrew,
like
you said
modifying.
lechalot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, is it modifying the verb, or it could be the direct object of the verb? That's pretty much what Robert Alter is saying, I think. Haba'a elai asu kala. Vedana verek hakit akata haba elai asu kala. So he's saying that the kala is basically the direct object of the verb asu, and it means have they done destruction, as the as the shouting that has come to me is telling me. But yeah, it could go your way as well, Yaakov. I agree. Have they completely done it? Vimlo eda'a. Just a brief point to something we mentioned, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, is what is this idea of why does God need to come down to take a look? I mean, this is almost, right, anthropomorphism of God, which obviously we have a lot of in the Torah, but this is even stranger because God knows all, right? God is omnipotent. Why does he need to come down to look at Sodom and Gomorrah? He could just see it just fine from up there in heaven, right? So
Yeah. Well, this is now the third time that he'll be coming down. The first time we saw that, he was in the garden. The second time was at the Tower of Babel, and now this is the third time here, coming down to look at what's going on with Sodom and Gomorrah. The fourth time will be coming up in the story of the Exodus.
That's right. And he says, when the Israelites cry out. So the first time is, I missed it because I took my headphones off for a second, but I'm assuming you said Noah.
Mm-mm. The first time he was in the garden. Now, whether he actually came down, he was in the garden. The second time was at the time of Babel. The third time is here. The fourth time will be in the story, the narrative of the Exodus. And if it's used again, I don't really know off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Devin.
Let's see, where was I?
Well, just to dwell on this 1 second, it's certainly related. So then with Noah, if it doesn't say, I'll come down and say I don't remember, I believe it certainly says that the cry had come up to heaven, right? Which is very similar. Maybe it doesn't. I have to go back and check the text now. But they're both obviously very related terms, right? Here explicitly, so in this verse, right? That the cry comes up to heaven, so God says, let me go down and see what's going on.
And it just says here, وَيَرَ أَضَنَيْ كِ رَبَّ رَعَاتْ هَأَدَمْ بَأَرَتْ وَقُلْ يَيْتَرْ مَحْشَبُوت لِبُّ رَعَ كُلْ هَيَوْم. It says وَيِنَّحِمْ أَضَنَيْ كِ عَصَا إِتْ هَأَدَمْ بَأَرَتْ وَيَتْعَتْ سَيْد إِلِّبُّ وَيَمَرَ إِمْهَا. I don't think it just says he saw.
Whatever.
But,
it's okay. Whatever. It's a secondary point. But yeah. You were going to say something?
No. I was just going to say, you could assume that whenever it mentions that he saw, that it's that he's turning his attention to something, and that's what it's talking about. Because the word to see and realize is synonymous, really. When it says that the woman saw that the tree was good for food and so forth, how did she see something? What does it mean? It actually meant that she realized that although she's probably seen it more than once, it was only at this point that the realization of what was being said to her actually struck home and said, hey, well, I guess he's right.
But so the big question here is why does God need to come down to earth to take a look? What does that even mean? Why can't he do it from
I
up
have
in
no
heaven?
idea. I have no idea.
Right. It's a difficult question. I mean, I can only render judgment. I mean, render speculation. One thing I would say is that it's Erdana that he's talking about sending the angels, right, who are going to be on earth, right? Because we already said before that when it speaks about Yehovah talking or Yehovah being spoken to, that often it's the angels, and the angels are physical creatures that have to, they're in contact with human beings on this earth, so they have to be down here on this earth usually. I mean, when they're interacting with humans, well, that's not even always the case, but many times they have to be down here on earth or are down here on earth interacting with humans. So maybe it's referring to sending angels down to earth, right? But why would angels need to go down to earth to be able to see? Why can't God see it from up there?
I don't know, but we see
Right?
throughout
That's
the
a question.
prophetic writings that the angels, that they roam around in the earth, and they're considered the eyes of God. And we
Right.
even see this in the story of Job. What was the angels doing?
That's right.
They were moving around in the earth. Apparently, they
Going
were
to and fro, yeah.
keeping tabs on things. And what that actually means, I don't
Well,
know.
Satan reports
I
back and
always
says,
understand.
I've gone. Yeah.
Well, you're right. He says, "I've gone to and fro in the
Yeah.
in the land," and there's a speculation that the word Satan could also mean come from the same verb that they use to go to and fro, and it's possible. I don't know, but what's interesting is when we see the vision of Zechariah talking about the eyes of God, the seven eyes of God. What are they doing? They're going to and fro. They're doing the same thing. They're going around through the land. It uses the same verb to see what's going on. And the way I understand it, it's just my way of understanding it, because that's the way my mind makes sense of all of it. Not saying that this is correct or that this is how it really is, but this is just the way I look at it. In order for me, whoever I am, okay, you look at me, you see this physical body, but this physical body is just a means to influence the physical realm. Okay, who I really am is something other than this physical body that you see. This is just a form that holds, that encases my being of who I really am in the physical realm. And it's through this physical body that I have to interact to influence the physical world. And I look at the angels being similar.
It's your character.
Right.
Yeah, it's your character in this giant video game that we call life. That's the way that's why I always like to explain it.
That's
right?
the way I look at it.
You stand in a Pac-Man machine, and you're pretty much what it is. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you, so go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's the way I look at it too. When we talk about the angelic beings, that's the physical manifestations of God in the physical realm. We see that God tells the Israelites, you can't make any graven images, because on the day that I spoke with you out of the column of fire on the mountain, you saw no physical form. But it says specifically that Moses saw a physical form. Now it uses the word, you didn't see any temunah, which means a form, okay? But it says that Moses did see him. He said, but Moses, he saw my form. What does it actually mean? And I believe that anytime it talks about that it's talking about these physical manifestations. Anyway.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I think you hit it right on the head, the nail right on the head, in the sense that all the action takes place down here in the realm of space and time, on this earth, in this universe. And if God wants to be in the action, so to speak, he's got
Right.
to send
He
someone
plays
down
by
here
the rules.
to be in the action. He plays by the rules that he created, right?
That's right.
And then you can get into a whole other philosophical discussion as to, why does God have to play by the rules? Well, or doesn't that limit his power? Well, no, it doesn't limit his power because he created the rules, right? So he's just following the rules that he created. But I actually agree with your interpretation. I think you hit the nail right on the head. In both cases, actually, those were the 2 points I was going to make. That number one, the action has to take place here in the realm of space and time. So some creature has to come down here into the realm of space and time. God is just kind of above it all and outside of it all. That's number one. And number two, everything has a protocol and has a chain of command, right? If you start an organization or a company, there's got to be some kind of chain of command. There's a CEO, there's a CFO, there's a COO, there's executives, and then et cetera, et cetera. Huge chain of command, right? Well, where do we get this idea from if not from Yahweh himself, right? I mean, this is a reflection of just the way structures are made. So if God's going to run the universe, there's also going to be a chain of command that he set up for whatever reason. For whatever reason he felt it was necessary to do so. And this is following, as you mentioned, that protocol, that chain of command. Okay, he's going to dispatch one of his angels down to earth to see what's going on, and then report back to him. So I agree with. I think you hit the nail exactly on the head, according to my opinion. So anyway.
Yep.
All
so
right.
verse 22. Are we at 22 now? Okay. ويفنوا الشام האנשים וילכו סדומה وأبراهام أوذنوا وميت לפני أدونai. Now this is interesting. Now we have a clear indication that one of the three was God himself. Says so. Says, and they turned.
Or was channeling God. Was channeling God. Yeah, it is very interesting. Mm-hmm.
And so the men turned from there, and they went towards Sodom. As for Abraham, while he remained standing in the presence of Adonai. Now, this is what I'm getting at. When we talk about this, the physical representation of God upon this earth, the first time we see it was in the form of the Malach Adonai, which appeared to Hagar. Now, then we have it in here. This is the second instance of it, and it's clearly in the form of three men. One of them is supposedly a representation of Adonai himself. And when we see that he appears to Moses, it says, "WayYera elav Melech Adonai bilevat eish," I think is what it says. In Shemot, that the angel of God appeared to Moses in the flame of a fire. And also, it was the same angel that was in the column of fire. It was the same angel that Moses, when Moses sends to the messengers to Edom, he says, "Look, we were in Egypt and we cried out to God, and he sent a messenger, an angel, to bring us out of Egypt." And so this is the angel that is called the Malach Panav, which means the angel of his presence. Isaiah identifies him as the Ruach Kodsho, which is the his Holy Spirit, or his holy breath. And it says that was the spirit that he set amongst them when he brought Moses and the Israelites out. And so this seems to be a specific angel. He says, "This is my Malachi, who will go before you. He's my presence, who will go before you, drive out your enemies from before you, and keep you in the way." And I think that's what we're talking about here.
Okay.
ويجاش أبراهام ويومر. Now, this is a really interesting conversation we're about to have.
Right.
And so Abraham came near and he says, Ha'av tispei sadiq im rasha. Are you really going to take the righteous with the rasha, which means the rebellious or the disobedient? And which begs the question:
Right. And
how can you be
how
can you be rasha without first being told? We're talking about the justice of God, and this is the point Abraham's bringing now. Now he knows his nephew's there, and he said, "Are you going to destroy the sadiq, which means the just, those who follow the just law, with the rasha?" Rasha is talking about people who violate, who go against this just law, and so how could there be rasha, right, without there first being some rule that they will be violating? You can't have rule violators without having first a rule to violate. This is the concept that's being broached now.
Right. So just to understand this word, tispeh. Tispeh means basically to sweep away, like a rushing water, or something like that. And let's just see here. One second.
I would think it would be synonymous with macha, which means to wipe out, to wipe away, to wipe clean.
I think it's related to the word sufa, which means like a storm, but I'm not 100% sure. So
well, that's
it
what
is related to that. I think the implication is,
to
wipe. It rushes. The water just rushes it. Rushes through and cleans it out. In Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 19, we have we're talking about a person who has decided in his own heart to violate the Torah, and it says, "V'haya bisham'o et divrei ha'ala hazot yitbarech b'levavo lemor shalom yeh li ki b'shrirut libi elech leva'an svot harava et tzme'ah." Right. So, in the translation, there would be basically, I'll paraphrase it, just. If somebody decides that they're going to disobey the words of the Torah and go against it with their own stubbornness, and then it says L'ma'an tzvot harava et hatzmeah, in order to wipe away the he who is full with he who is satisfied with he who is still thirsty. Okay, so that's the same idea of just wiping away that we see there in Deuteronomy 29, 19. And so what Abraham is basically saying is, I guess it's clear, but are you gonna have the waters rush through and wipe away? I don't mean literally the waters, but figuratively speaking, the waters rush through and wipe away the righteous person together with the wicked person, right? So Abraham is basically challenging God's logic, or challenging God's he's basically calling him a he's really putting his butt on the line here by calling God kind of like a
he's questioning the actions of God. And so he's just he's doing it really carefully by putting hypotheticals now before the Creator, and he's going to say. So the next verse is Ulai yesh hamishim sadiqim b'toch ha'ir ha'af tispei v'lo tisa lemakom lima'an hamishim hasadiqim asher b'tirba. And so he says, perhaps there shall be, or there is, 50 who are just sadiq, which means to be they are just, and they follow the path of righteousness and justice amongst the city. Will you wipe out? Will you really wipe out and not bear up the place? Tisat lamakom, which means literally to bear up the place, which means
Tolerate,
to forbear.
tolerate.
Are you gonna put up with it? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Because of the 50 righteous, which are in its midst, which are, and I made this point once before. We were talking about how crooked and terrible America is at the moment, and
Right.
one thing that withholds the actual divine judgment of a place is the fact that there might be righteous people there, and sometimes, just like with Lot, in order for God to come in and judge the place, the righteous have to leave. You got to get out of there, which is why you hear this theme, come out from amongst her. Don't touch this unclean thing. Get away, so that God's justice. If you want things to change and you want divine justice to happen, you gotta step out of the way and quit interceding on behalf of wicked people.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I wanted to point out here is, and you touched upon it, Yaakov, is how much Abraham is really, excuse my Swahili, but how much he's really putting his ass on the line here. I mean, he's taking a huge risk.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, telling God, basically contradicting God. Not only is he taking a huge risk, like, God could say, "How dare you, lowly mortal, question the great God, and send a lightning bolt and zap him, and that's the end of Abraham." But it's more than that. It's a mental risk for even him to think that Yehovah, that God has faulty logic, takes such a bold stance, just even internally in your own head, because the average person is going to say, oh, this is what God says, it's the way it is, game over, we're not going to question this. But the greats, and we see this with Moshe as well, they will question God. They'll fight against God when they feel their internal. Yeah. When they're internal, and I don't mean fight in a rebellious way. They'll fight for what they believe in front of God, and God always respects that and answers them just about always in the positive, which is amazing. But it really takes some kind of internal fortitude. Ironically, it takes a very close connection with God, with Yehovah, to be able to challenge Yehovah, right?
Yeah, look at Samson. Samson, he flies. Hey, you bring me out here just to die.
What's that?
Do all Samson, he says, he often has a really, when you look at it, it looks like he's really complaining. He's really accusing God. Did you bring me out here just to die? And then it says, at that moment, the Spirit of God came on him. He took up the ass bone and slew however many thousands of Philistines.
Right.
But but the point is that it's that moment just about in the midst of desperation. You're sincere and you believe God. You know this can't be it. This can't be it. And so you get to your last thread of hope, and you finally blurt it out, "Hey, is this how it's going to be?" And it's at that moment that you see miracles happen.
And I just had a revelation, okay, which I'd like to relate to this here, okay. It takes a real big man, as we're saying here, to be able to question Yehovah on this level, right? So it's the difference between having a fake relationship or an average relationship with Yehovah and having a true personal relationship with Yehovah. This is a sign of someone who has a true personal relationship with Yehovah, that he's actually able to challenge You see the irony? You would think that someone so close to Yahweh would never challenge him because he's so close to him. But actually, the ones who are farther away would be the ones who would never challenge Yahweh. And it's always the ones who are very close to God, to Yahweh, that will, when necessary, challenge him. I just want to take a little side point here and say that, yeah. Go ahead, Yaakov. Go.
We see that, when it talks about that Abraham hit Halek et Elohim, that Abraham walked with God. Okay, we see God tells him, "Come out from your land. I'm gonna make you a great people." He's childless. He doesn't have any children.
Right.
He's 70 something years old when he leaves. You have to think about it. He's 70 years old at the time that he leaves Haran. Okay, he's in after 75 years or however long it was, like he was 90, I think it was, when he had Ishmael. He'd been there for 10 years or so, however long it was. But anyways, the point is, even though he believed God, he left. He did what he was supposed to do. It's been more than 10 years. He's sitting in this land. He still has no children. All right. And what does he say? What are you going to give me? How do I know? How am I going to know that you're going to do this for me? I'm still without children. Right. So it's not always this, okay, I'm just going to be this humble, always listening, obedient person. This doesn't mean Abraham was disobedient, but doubtful and questioning. Yeah, you can imagine. You have to put yourself in his position.
What does the word Israel mean? Right? You struggled. You fought with God and man, and you emerged victorious. I just thought of that. I'm just thinking of this right now. It's
prayer.
It's beautiful.
And
it's all coming together.
Prayer. Think about that. That's talking about prayer. Yaakov was on the bank of Yabok. He had his look. He's coming back after 20 years. He knows his brother was really mad, wanted to kill him. Okay, and what does he do? He sends, the first things he does is he sends messengers. Okay, he said, "Hey, you go there, you meet my brother. You say, hey, your servant Yaakov is coming, and here's the gift. Okay, here's the gift." All right. What he hears, he sees his messengers coming back with the animals that he just sent, and he says, "Yeah, he didn't want it, and your brother Esau, he's coming with 300 men, I think it was. It was a lot of people." The first thing Yaakov is thinking, okay, God just told me to go back to my land. Now, am I coming back to die? And that was his thought. Right. So he divides his family up. He says, "I'm gonna have to do it this way, just in case he kills everybody else. At least these two may be able to escape." And that's the way he's looking at it, as he's dividing his family up, so he doesn't lose everybody, because he thinks he's going to die.
That's right.
All right. And so he's standing there alone after he's already sent his family across the Yabok into Canaan. And he's praying, and this is when he meets the angel. And it says he struggles with this man all night long. He said, "I'm not going to let you go till you bless me." And that's when his name was changed. So you're right. This is a struggle. And it's talking about prayer in prayer.
Right. Yep. So let me finish off a couple of things that I wanted to say, which is, so we see that here Abraham he's a very big man has a very close relationship with Yahweh to be able to question Yahweh. Okay. The second thing is that he's really, in a certain sense, putting himself in danger. Hence the way he tiptoes around the whole thing. He's very deferential to God. He says, where is it? Hold on a second. Where's the classic example? Verse 30, which we'll see in a little while. Yomer al na yichar Adonai v'adabra ulai v'yimsa'un sham shlosha. Right? And let me, please, may I speak to my master, and let him not be angry. Actually, I was looking for a different verse, but it's the same idea. I was looking for verse 32. Yomer al na yichar Adonai v'adabra achapam ulai yimsa'un sham asara. Right? he's speaking in this very deferential kind of Hebrew. This beyond polite. It's just extremely deferential, and it just shows the risk that Abraham thought that he was taking by going against Yehovah, by questioning Yehovah's way. His to question Yehovah's very logic. That it just really takes an incredible, strength of internal character to be able to do that. And as we said, Moshe did the same thing. Now, I wanted to relate it to, this idea of Israel being the name Israel explicitly comes from. It's the story we just mentioned, where Yaakov is fighting with the angels, is about to cross back over the Yabok river, and then he fights with the angel. The angel gives him the name Yisrael. You're no longer to be called Yaakov. Now your name is Yisrael. Ki sarta, I think it's sarta, sarita. I think it's sarta im Elohim ve'adam v'yechota, which means you have struggled, you have fought with God and men, and you have emerged victorious. It seems like those who are closest to Yehovah somehow have to have this kind of struggle with him, this fight, and it's only through the fight that in the end they emerge as one on the other side of that fight. There has to be some struggle going on, and we see that with all the greats. We see that here with Abraham. We see that with Moshe when Yehovah wanted to destroy the nation of Israel. Moshe basically fights with Yehovah, saying, if you do that, then erase me from this book. Right? He's outright contradicting Yehovah. So these are great men who are able to do this, to not just go along and say, okay, yes, God is just this great God, and that's the end of it, and I just do whatever He says without question. Right? That's a mediocre type of person. The greats are very loyal to Yehovah, but they're so loyal to Him that they know when that because it's almost like Yehovah is their teacher who has taught them above and beyond, and they've internalized His ways so much that when they feel that even He is violating His own ways, that they feel this need to point it out, and that's the sign of a true tzaddik. That's the sign of a truly great man, and that's what we see in the patriarchs. I wanted to point out one more thing, which is that they always talk about 3 stages of growth. Okay, or they always. I mean, it is spoken of about 3 stages of growth. There's dependence, independence, and interdependence. Okay, dependence is the most immature stage. It's a baby and a child is dependent on his parents. Okay, then independence, when he becomes an adolescent and a teenager, he rebels and he becomes independent. He becomes a maverick, a lone maverick who does whatever he wants. And then eventually, the later stage of maturity is to find out that doesn't really work. There's interdependence, where yes, and interdependence is linked with this idea of self-actualization. They usually say, where you reach such a high level that you no longer have to prove your independence. You don't have to longer be like a rebellious teenager. You become so self-actualized, and you become so knowledgeable of yourself and acquired enough wisdom that now you can interlink with other people in a way that is not going back to the original stage of dependence, but that is more a merging or a synergy between you and other people. And I would say that this is exactly what we see these stages in the world. The lowest people are at the kind of dependent stage. Ironically, they reject God, they rebel against God. They're at the lowest state of maturity. Okay, that would be equivalent to the state of dependence. It's not an exact analogy because they're not dependent on God, because they don't even believe in God. But in a certain sense, they are dependent on God, even though they don't realize it. The next stage would be this rebellious stage. Okay, this teenager stage. Okay, I'm independent. I can do whatever I want. Which, ironically, within the realm of religion, would be I think characterized by just following God blindly. Okay, yes, that would be your average. Your average. Priest, average rabbi. They don't really question too much. They just follow God blindly, but they think they're great men of God. And then you get beyond that, you get to the stage of interdependence, where you are so self-actualized that you're so self-actualized and so close to Yehovah that you no longer even follow Him blindly. You follow Him, but you've internalized His values so much that you will fight against even Him when you find it necessary. And these are the stages that all the patriarchs have to reach through their struggles, through their trials and tribulations. And these are the stages that they they must reach, and Abraham actually only reaches, this is a sign that he's getting close to stage, but in my opinion, as I've been saying for years, Abraham actually only reaches the stage of self-actualization at the incident of the Akedah, at the incident of the sacrifice of his son. It's when he's able to overcome that struggle, which in that case was complete submission to Yehovah and complete love, believing that Yehovah would never ever steer me wrong. I don't understand why, but I have to do this. It was through that struggle that he was able to reach this ultimate level of oneness with Yehovah. I hope what I said kind of makes sense. It was a bit rambling, I know, but
no, it makes good sense.
Here,
and also, that's the whole focus of the story of Job. That's the whole. That's
yes,
entire,
absolutely.
What you're talking about.
It definitely
the entire
is.
Focus. The story of Job really rubs people, in the eye. When you think about it, because here you have a righteous man who stays away from evil. He's a God-fearing man, what it says in the text, and then there's a wager between God and the Satan about the nature of Job. Does he serve God for nothing? And that's the whole point of this. Now, Job maintained his innocence, while the people who came to mourn with him accused Job. Said, "Look, God is not unjust. He doesn't punish people for nothing." Right? That's the whole thing. That's the entire conversation. Job has maintained his innocence and said, God is persecuting me without just cause. Okay?
That's right.
And at the very end, he was actually justified. God finally had enough. He says, look, Job has spoken rightly about me, but you guys, you spoke falsely. Okay? And what was it that they were saying? That God didn't do this. Okay, but now I just want to...
It's such a brilliant point. It's such a brilliant point because Job is doing exactly what one of the greats are doing, right? The three friends that come to Job, they're the mediocrities. They're at that second level. They're just following God blindly. God could never do anything wrong. You can never question God. What are you talking about? Questioning God, question yourself. You're the one who's obviously sinned. Look deep into yourself and you'll find the sin. God would never punish unjustly. And Job says, no, as you said, Job says, no, I maintain my innocence. I don't know why this is happening to me. I will not open my mouth. I will not say a word against God. I will not, God forbid, curse him. I will not say anything against him. I will only praise him and bless him and accept what's happened to me. But I did nothing wrong. I maintain my innocence. Something is not right here. And in the end, Yehovah comes to Job and says, you are the righteous one. You have arrived at that third level. Your other friends, pray for them and sacrifice for them, because otherwise I'm going to kill them, because they spoke stupidly. They spoke brazenly about me by trying to say what I am and what I am not.
They had to pay a fine to Job because they accused him unjustly. But now there was a question. I hope I pronounced this name correctly. Nicola Rudier. If I butchered your name, I apologize.
Yes.
But the question is there a Masoretic edit in verse 1822 to say Abraham is standing next to Adonai instead of the other way around? Actually, it is what's called a tikkun soferim, which means basically an edit or a correction of the scribes, and basically it says Haya Ra'ui wa Adonai Odinu Omeid Lifnei Abraham. And so the way the scribes want to correct it is not that the way it's actually written in the text, but they explain it as, and while Adonai was standing before Avram, and not the other way around. But that's the only thing the Masoretes actually talk about there.
Yeah. Yes, and I also wanted to relate to another comment that Nicola, not sure how to pronounce it, saying is, he says, Noah is also as great as any other righteous person, but never questioned God. Not sure there's a clear set of rules, but Noah is called tzaddik b'doro, is called tzaddik in his generation, and that qualifier is very possibly and clearly understood by the rabbis, and very possibly also, although we discussed it the other week, very possibly indicated that he was not as great as the others. He was great in his evil generation, but Noah is clearly not on the level of an Abraham or an Isaac or Jacob. I mean, he's what does he do afterwards? He gets drunk, right? And there's a whole incident with him becoming uncovered in his tent.
To be fair,
falls off the wagon once in a while, but
to be fair, how would any normal person handle the complete destruction of all but 8 people? You're on this boat, the door's shut,
time to drink, right?
And you spend a year.
Right.
Just imagine the first few days. You've got people outside hanging on to something. They didn't just decide, well, I'm just going to drown. We don't know exactly how it all came about, but you can imagine the complete destruction of this planet, this paradise that they had, and everybody but 8 people died. His entire family, everyone he'd ever known in his life, is now dead. And that included even, Seth and the Methuselah and all these people that been around for a long time. To be fair, after a year being on a boat full of animals,
it's like, damn, I really need a drink right now.
You dang all right. Hey, man. Whew.
Anyway, Nicola, you do make a good point. So Nicola says God lists him in Ezekiel 14:14 with Job and Daniel. Yes, but that's poetry. I don't think it's a scientific statement saying that Noah and Daniel and Job are okay. I accept that. I accept that proof. It's a nice proof. Although still, I don't think that Noah is any indication that Noah was on the same level as an Abraham or an Isaac or Jacob. That's my opinion. All right. Yep. Anyway,
so back to the conversation. 25. חלילה לך מעשות כדבר הזה להמית צדיק עם רשע והיה כצדיק כרשע חלילה לך השופט כל הארץ לא יעשה משפט. Now this is a really a heck of a thing to say, but
that's some harsh words. That's some them's fighting words.
Khalila means basically
is fighting words. I mean,
far be it from you doing according to this.
Right.
Okay. Right. To kill the righteous with the disobedient, and that the righteous shall be like the disobedient. Far be it from you, the judge of all the world. He shall not do justly. Now that is a heck of a thing to say. And you have to think about it. That's almost the same thought that the companions of Job had. Mm-hmm. How could the just creator of the world do such a thing to righteous people? And but we also see that the righteous also have a responsibility to stand up for the right, to correct injustice, and not to share in the sins of the wicked. And that's why it says in the Torah that you don't share in the destruction of the wicked because of their sins. But still, for Abraham to be standing here talking to the creator of the universe and say, "Hey,
yeah, it takes some
major
guts.
Shit.
It really takes some major guts." Yeah. Yeah.
26.
In verse 26, Yahweh exceeds.
Yep. Yomer Adonai im sa b'Sodom 50 צדיקים בתוך העיר ונסעתי לכל המקום בעבורם. Now he says, if I find 50 there, then I'll spare the entire place because of that 50 righteous. Okay? Which lets you know that he already knew there wasn't 50 going to be there. ويعن أبراهام ويمار حينئذ هؤلتي لدبر إلى أدوناي وأنوخي عفار وعفار. And so Abraham answered, and he says, behold, please, and bear with me, and let me dare to speak to my Lord, even though I'm merely dust and ashes. أولئك يخسرون 50 الصديقين 5 التشخيص ب5 إذ كل העיר ויאמר לו אשחית אם אמצא שם 45. So Abraham is speaking now again. He says, perhaps 5 righteous would be less from the 50. I mean, what if 5 fails? What if you have only 45 is basically what he's asking.
But you see the brilliance of the argument here?
Yeah.
I mean, do you see from a mathematics point of view, the brilliance of the argument? See, he's now going to throw back in God's face. You already said that you'd spare the entire city for 50 people.
50.
Okay?
Ooh, that's right.
Now I'm asking for 5. All right, what if it's lacking by 5? Now for 5 people, you're going to destroy the city? You just said you'd spare it for 50.
Right.
How could you now go ahead and destroy it for 5? Ha! He outsmarted God, right? He got God to agree that he'd spare 50 people. So now he has him in the corner pocket. You can't destroy it for 5, right? Or he's not saying it that way, but he's throwing the logic back at God. Would you really destroy it for 5?
Because that's right. Because of the lack of the 5.
Right. So God, in a certain sense, he's using this brilliant logic to convince God, right?
Yeah.
And then God actually, and God says, right? So God has to listen to that logic.
Okay, I won't destroy it even if I find only 45.
Right. Because again, just to emphasize that point, he doesn't go in verse 28 and say, what if we find 45? Right? He already got God down to 50, right? It's like bargaining in the shop, in the marketplace, right? In the Middle East, right? I already got the guy down to 50, okay? And now it's like, okay, you already admitted that you would spare for 50. How about 5? I'm just asking just a little bit more, just 5. You already said 50, so 5 is much less than 50, and you already said you would spare for 50. Certainly, you should be able to spare for 5, right? And that's how he's using this brilliant logic because he's so passionate about this idea of not destroying a city, even if there's a few tzaddikim in the city, because he believes in his heart that that's the right thing. It's really amazing. It's amazing.
29.
Okay, I'll take verse 29.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. No, go ahead.
ويوسف عود لدبر إله ويمار أولى يمسئون الشام 40 ويمر لو عسى بعبور 40. And so he says, well, and he spoke to him again, or he continued to speak, and he says, perhaps only
that argument worked. The 5 argument works. So Avram's thinking, okay, the 5 argument worked. Let me just push that one more time and see if it's going to work again. All right. We already got, that worked once. Let's see if it works again, and it worked again.
Yeah. And he says, so I won't do it even for the sake of the 40. Verse 30.
Right.
And
now in verse 30, Avram says,
he says,
now he's going to get to 30, and he's going to say, all right, well, listen, okay, the 5 worked twice. Let me see if I can go for 10 this time, And also, that 10 is the same that he already got him to go down from 50, right? He's down to 40, so he already, again, that same argumentation. You already spared the city for 10 people, so it's obvious that you are capable of sparing the city for 10 people. So I'm going to ask for another 10.
Yeah, and well, he eventually ends up with just 10. And the question always was, why did he stop at 10? What's so important about the 10? And we know that it was probably Lot and his daughters, because we only see the 2 that were saved. Okay, but he had more than those 2. He had it was Lot, his daughters, however many they may have been, we're not told, but they were more than 2, and his wife, and perhaps sons, if he had sons, we don't know. But the point is that it was more than likely just the 10 people of Lot and his immediate family that he was interceding for. And of course, only Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters who were in his house, because the other daughters they'd married. It says they were already married and had their own families.
Right. I would just like to say that I think the reason he stopped at 10 is when you're conversing with someone, again, I'll give an example of bargaining down, prices in the shuk. You kind of just have an innate sense of when the conversation is over. Like, you've gotten the guy down as much as you're going to get him, and you just know you can't go any further, right? So maybe in the shuk we go something like, oh, that's a nice piece of jewelry, which you probably just had your cousin make yesterday for about 2 cents. But instead of 150 shekels for that piece of jewelry, okay, I'll give you 50. All right. And then the guy says, no, give me 75. It's like, okay, how about 65? Okay, 70 is a very special piece of jewelry. Yeah, take it for 70. And you're like, no, I'll give you 65. It's like, no, 70. No, 65. Okay, 67. That's it. Okay. And at that point, that's pretty much, you're either going to take it or not take it. A conversation has a natural kind of flow to it. And when 2 people are having a conversation, and these are 2, not people, but 2 entities having a conversation, Avraham and Noah, you kind of know that the conversation has come to a natural end. You just feel it. So that's my explanation as to why he stopped there. He realized that's it. He's played all his cards.
It doesn't.
That's as far as the conversation is going to go.
To be fair, it doesn't say anything in the text that Abraham stopped bargaining. All right. Whenever he got to the tent,
we can apply.
Whenever he got to the tent, it says, "WayYelech Adonai ka'asher kilah ledaber il Avraham, wa Avraham shav lemekomo." So it basically says when Abraham asked about the 10, he says, I won't do it for the sake of the 10. I won't destroy them for the sake of the 10. And it says, and then God left after he finished speaking with Abraham. Okay. So that basically meant God ended this. Okay, now it's done. So it's not necessarily that Abraham stopped interceding, but there's another question from Nicola. It says, in your opinion, is Abraham bargaining for Lot and his family, or in general out of piety for the whole city? And personally, my personal opinion, he's interceding only for Lot and his family. And the reason why I say that is because Abraham's in the land of Canaan at the time that Kedorlaomer and his army came in and decimated Canaan. He did not act. He did not get involved in this war until he got word that his nephew was taken captive. And that's when he rallied his troops and went and decimated the army of those 5 kings. He had it within his power the whole time to intercede and stand up and say, hey, this ain't right. You coming into Canaan and doing whatever you're going to do. He didn't act until it was come down to his nephew.
Well, I'm actually have to disagree with you on that one. I think that he's doing it for the principle, the righteous principle, and I think that bears itself out from the language. His arguments are all arguments based on justice and logic, and it would or it would be pretty cynical if Abraham was using these general principles of justice and kindness and mercy, or basically justice and logic, just as a ploy to save his own nephew's ass, right? Especially before God, right? So I don't think, based on the language, that there's anything else going on here, except Abraham feels deep in his heart that the very sense of justice is being violated. He sees, an entire city being destroyed. That means, it's like 9/11 on steroids, right? And he sees all the death and destruction that's going to happen to innocent people, and that really, irks him. That really makes him feel that something is wrong here. So I don't think there's any indication, in my opinion, that he's doing this just to save his nephew's ass. And if he really wanted to save his nephew's ass, he could have just asked for something like, would you mind waiting a day or two, and I'm going to go grab my nephew and let him know what's going on, and get him the hell out of here. And his nephew would have listened to him, right? It is his nephew, right? And his nephew ended up listening to the angel, so he clearly would have, he clearly listens when he's told to do something. So I don't think so at all. I think clearly this is something that is bothering Abraham at the very depths and the very heart of his soul, that the justice is being violated by the God who is the creator and the guardian of justice. And again, that's borne out in where is it? Where is it? 1 second, you guys want to hear it? I can't find it now, but wherever God says, I want to get the words correctly. Here it is, in verse 25. Okay, shall the judge of all the world not do justice? So there's clearly something else going on just above and beyond Avram trying to save his nephew's ass.
Keep talking. I have to take a short break. I'll be right back.
Well, I think I'm going to take a short break too, and I think I'm going to put on music for a couple of minutes because I also need a break. So let's do that. Yeah,
right, I'll be right back.
We'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. What can we put on? Oh, I don't know. I'll play this song too many times. Let's see what else we have here. Okay.
כתוב בתורה הקדושה, אנוכי אסתיר פניי ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא. אבל ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד.
ואפילו בהסתרה, ובתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא שם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא שם יתברך.
אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד.
גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד.
גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני
All right, Yaakov, I notice you're back.
Yep.
So take it away. I'm going to take a break for a couple of minutes. Okay.
All right. I'm
And,
gonna probably continue for another half hour.
right.
And then
right.
then I'm gonna stop for the evening.
Sounds
That'll
good.
be 3 hours.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, definitely. We'll just take I'm just going to take a 5-minute break or so. Just grab a little snack or something.
Okay,
like that.
no
Just a
problem.
little bit hungry. So you go on, and
So-
I'll pick it up with you in a couple minutes. Yep.
Yep. So we have Abraham, who just spoke with God about about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he interceded on behalf of righteous men, and also righteous women as well. And so, verse 23. וילך אדוני כאשר קילה לדבר אל אברהם, ואברהם שב למקומו. And so it says, and Adonai left as he finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. And so now we're in chapter 19. ויבואו שני המלכים סדומה בערב, ולוט יושב בשער סדום, וירא לוט ויקום לקראתם, וישתחו Tahu Apayim Arasa. And so the two angels. Now, this is how we know that the men, because the men left and they were heading towards Sodom and Gomorrah, as the three of the men were speaking with Abraham. Of course, Adonai remained there and spoke with Abraham, and two left. Okay, and so it says now the two angels, or two of the angels, and now we have the actual phrase Melachim. And Malach literally means a messenger. And this is what the word angelos actually means. The English angel comes from the Greek angelos. Angelos means really an ambassador, someone who's sent on behalf of someone, but also has the authority to negotiate whatever the situation demanded. And so now we have two of the messengers came to Sodom in the evening. And Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom, and Lot looked, or he saw, and he stood up to meet them, or he rose to meet them. And it says he bowed, or he prostrated his face towards the earth. So we have basically the same situation that Lot just did. Abraham was sitting in the door, or the opening of his tent. Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Abraham looked and saw the men, stood up to meet them, and said he ran towards them to meet them. Then we see Lot. He looked up, he saw the men, and it says he stood to meet them. Both men prostrated themselves to these men. There's nothing in either narrative which suggests that these were anything other than normal men. So the idea is that they were just being honorable, hospitable men to these people coming. ויאמר הננה אדוני סורו נא אל בית עבדכם ולינו ורחצו רגליכם והשכמתם והלכתם לדרכם ויאמרו לו כי ברחוב נמין. And so he says to them, and this is Lot speaking to these men, behold, please, my Lord, and he uses the same word, Adonai, and same word that Abraham used, Adonai. Turn aside now to the house of your servant, and stay there, stay the night there, and wash your feet, and then rise up in the morning, and then you can go on your journey. And they said, no, rather we will remain the night in the street. וישרבם מאוד, ויסורו אליו, ויבואו אל ביתו, ויעש להם משתה, ומצות עפה, ויאכלו. And so it says that he pressed him. He pressed him greatly, which means he basically bugged them until they said okay. And so they turned aside to him, and they entered into his house. And so he made a mishte, which is usually translated as a feast, but here it means something to drink. He made for them something to drink. And he baked matzot, or matzah bread, and they ate. Terem yishkivu, وأنشي העיר, אנשי סדום, נסבו על הבית, من نعر ועד זקן, כל העם מקצה. And before they laid themselves down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house. And this is from young men, Na'ar, even unto the elders. All of the people, mitqatseh, from the edges, even from the edges of town. Everyone came to the house of Lot and surrounded it. ويقروا اللوط ويمروا له أي האנשים أشر באו إليך הלילה חוציים إليנו ונדע אותם. And they called unto Lot, and they said to him, where are the men that came into you tonight? Bring them out to us, because we would like to know them. Now, there's lots of commentary that the men of Sodom were specifically talking about engaging in homosexuality. While that can be the case, it's not necessarily demanded from the context. They wanted to simply know who they were. This is verse 6. ويتسى إليهم لوط حبتها وحدلت صغار أخراب. And so Lot came out to them. Hapitha, which means into the doorway. وحدلت صغار أخراب, and he shut the door behind him. So he came out of his house, he's standing in the opening where the door is, and he shut the door behind him. ويومار ألنا أخاي تريئو, and he says to them, please, my brethren, don't do something wicked, don't act wickedly. הננה לי שתי בנות אשר לא ידעו איש וצי-אנה אתהן עליהם ועשו להן כטוב בעיניכם רק לאנשים האל אל תעשו דבר, כי על כן באו בצל קורתי. Behold, I have 2 daughters which have not known a man. I will bring them, or it says Otsi Ana, basically allow me to bring them out to you, and do to them whatever is good in your eyes. Only to these men, le'anashim ha'el, to these men, don't do anything, because ki al kain ba'u b'tzel korathi, because they came under the shadow of my roof. ويومروا gish hala'a ويومروا ha'ihad ba'lagor ويشپوت shafot عتا نذا لخا ميهم ويفسروا ואיש בלוט מאוד ויגשו לשבור הדלת. And so they said to him, Gish hala'a, which means come a little bit closer, come further. And they said, this one came, Lagur, which means to dwell, Yishpot Shafot, and he judged, and he certainly wishes to judge. And now, Nada Lecha Mehem, and now we know you, basically, are with them, are of them. And so they pressed, so the men, وَيِفْسِرُوا Vaish Belot Me'ot. And so they pressed them concerning the men. They pressed him concerning the men against Lot greatly. And they came near to break the door. So that they kept pushing him, kept pressing him to bring the men out. And they almost, or they came close to break the door. ويشلخوا האנשים את ידם ויביאו את לוט אליהם הביתה ואת הדלת סגרו. And so the men, this is talking about not the men of the city now, but the men who came to stay with Lot. So the men, literally it says sent out their hand, but basically means they reached out. And they took Lot to them into the house, and they closed the door. وَإِذْ هَأَنَشِيمْ أَشِرْ پَتَّاخ هَبَايَت هِكُّ بَسَنْ وَيْرِيم بِكَتَون وَعَدَ قَدَول وَيِلُؤُ لِمْسُو هَپَتَاخ. It says, and the men, this is again the men who were who just brought Lot inside, and the men which were at the door of the house, they struck with blindness from the small unto the great, and they felt around to find the door. وَيَوْمَرُ هَأَنَشِيمْ إِلْلَوْتْ عُوذْ مِي لَخَا پَوْ. And so the men said to Lot, عُوذْ مِي لَخَا پَوْ خَثَانْ وَنَيْخَا وَنُثَيْخَا وَكُلْ أَشَرْ لَخَا بَعِيرْ خُوتِي مِنْ هَمَكُمْ. And so the men said to Lot, how many, or who remains with you here? Khatan uvanecha. Khatan means the in-laws, the son-in-laws, and your sons and your daughters. All that is with you in the city. Hotsei min hamakom. Then bring out from the place. So there we have, for the first time, the mention that Lot may have had sons. We know that he had daughters, and he also had son-in-laws, which is we'll see here in a minute. So bring them out of this place. Ki mashhithim anachnu et hamakom hazeh ki gadela sa'akatam et pnei Adonai ويشلخenu Adonai li shechafar. Because we are destroyers, or we are going to destroy this place. Because his cry is great before God, before Adonai, and Adonai has sent us to destroy it. ويتسي لوط ويدبر إلى خطناف لقحي بنوفاف ويومر كمو سؤو من همكم هزي كما شهيد أدوناي إتهائير ويهي كم صحيح بعناي خطناف. And so it says, Lot went out and he spoke to his son-in-laws, the ones who took his daughters. But it doesn't say he spoke to his sons. So evidently he didn't have sons. And he said, stand up, go out from this place, because Adonai is destroying the city. However, his son-in-laws took him as a joke. And so we have Kemasahek. Kemasahek. Just one joking. Sahek means to be a joke. And we'll see the exact phrase here later in the story of the weaning of Isaac. וכמו השחר עלה ויעיצו המלכים בלוט לאמור קום קח את אשתך ואת שתי בנותיך הנמצאות פן תספתי בעוון העיר. Now this is what I was saying just earlier about sharing in the punishment of a wicked city. It says, and as the sun, the morning was rising, Ukamo Hashachar Allah, as the morning rose, the angels or the messengers were adamant. They became really serious with Lot, saying, stand up, take your wife and your two daughters, the ones who are remaining, Hanim Sa'ot, the ones who remain, lest you are wiped away with the iniquity of the city, or the evil of the city, the Avon. ويثمح ويحزقوا האנשים בידו וביד אשתו וביד שתי בנותיו בחמלת אדוני עליו ויוציאוהו ויניחוהו מחוץ העיר. And it says ويثمح, which means he basically drug his feet. He was delaying. He was procrastinating. This is a word that my wife likes to say to me a lot. Don't procrastinate. And so the men seized him by the hand, and also his wife and his two daughters, with the Hemlat Adonai Alav, which means the Hemlat, the pity of God upon him. And they brought him out, and they set him outside of the city. So I just want to check my messages, because as I read, I don't pay attention to the comments. So 17, verse 17. ויהי כהוציאם אותם החוצה ויאמר המלט על נפשך אל תביט אחריך ואל תעמוד בכל הכיכר ההרה המלט פן תספה. And as they brought them outside the city, they said, flee for your life. Himmaled ala nafshecha, which basically means flee, to escape for yourselves, for your lives. Al tabit acharecha, don't look back behind you, and don't stand in any place of the plain. Okay? Flee to the mountains, lest you are also wiped out. وَيَوْمَرْ لَوْتْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنَا أَدْنَاي. And so Lot says to them, not so, my lords. Hinena matza abdecha hein be'anecha وتغدل حسدך أشر عسيت إما بي لحיות את נפשי وأנוכי לא אוכל להמלט ההרע פן תטבחני הרעה ומתי. And so, look, basically he's saying, look, if your servant has found grace in your eyes, and let your grace be magnified, which you've done with me to spare my life. Look, I'm not able to flee to the mountains, lest evil cling to me and I die. Verse 20. Hinena ha'ir hazod kirova lanus shamma wahi miz'ar immalakana shamma halo miz'ar hi uthachi nafshi. And so he says, basically, behold, this city is near, that I can flee there. And it is mis'ah, which means it's near, it's a short distance. Allow me to escape or flee there. Isn't it mis'ar he, which means isn't it a shorter distance? And my soul shall live, or my soul shall escape. Okay, so it's now almost 3 hours that we've been together, and I don't like to let them run too much longer than 3 hours, so I'm gonna end it there, which is where Lot actually asked to escape to a place called the Zoar, which is why it's called Zoar, which is what we talked about last week. Talking about one of the cities of the plain, which was called the Zoar after the fact, or actually before the fact that it was actually named that. But anyways, so let me look back in. I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah, Yaakov. Just with your permission, just 2 minutes. I was listening to the whole thing. I just want to make a couple of very, very quick points.
No problem.
I'll make separate videos on them. The first point is, and by the way, I wanted to talk to you. I think maybe we should make little short videos. But I'll talk to you separately to put on the world like this, rather than 3-hour studies, which people might or might not be able to tolerate. If we did like little shorts, like 10 or 20-minute videos about specific topics, I think it would be amazing. But I did want to say, just very, very briefly, I'll be under 5 minutes, I promise, because I know you want to get going.
No problem.
A couple of things. So the first point was regards to Stomen Amoran and homosexuality, right? There's no indication that, as is the typical Christian Western implication or assumption, that Stomen Amorah were destroyed because of homosexuality. Although we do have a story there of attempt, forced rape, homosexual rape. But the proof is, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the verse because I don't want to keep you, but there's another place where it mentions the actual sins somewhere in the Tanakh, and I don't remember where.
Yeah, it's Ezekiel.
Ezekiel, right?
Hang on, I'll post it for you.
Yeah. So if you post that verse, that would be great.
Is Ezekiel 16:49.
Perfect.
It's 49 and 50. So I'm just going to post the English here.
Mm-hmm. There we go. Yes.
So that's 49.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's 50.
Yeah, it's both of them. So I'll just read it out in the translation you posted. Behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Stone. Pride, surfeit of bread. I don't even know what surfeit means, or I knew it one time, but I forgot. But at any rate, an abundance of idleness was in her daughters, and she did not strengthen the hand of the poor and needy, and they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore, I took them away when I saw it. Okay? So I guess you could argue that in 1650, when it says abomination, it's speaking about homosexuality. But I think that it's speaking about
It could be
abominations in
speaking
general.
about a lot more than just that.
Right.
But
Exactly. Many things are called abominations, including the use of unequal weights. Weights is called an abomination, for instance, in the book of Proverbs. So, but at any rate, the focus here is clearly not this homosexuality, as the Christians have pointed out. It's not the focus of what's going on here. And when a society goes wicked, as unfortunately the United States of America has to a large degree now, it goes wicked in every single way. It's always the same things. I always like to say, when a society goes south, it goes south in every single way. It's always idol worship and murder and bloodshed and haughtiness and perversion of justice and sexual perversions. It always goes together. There's no such thing as a society that is just doing one thing wrong. When it goes south on every single level. So while it clearly was one of the things mentioned in the story in Genesis, it's not the focal point of what was going on with Sodom and Amorah. They'd become a wicked society, and usually when God is talking about wickedness, he's usually speaking about idol worship, shvichut damim, the spilling of innocent blood, perversion of justice, ignoring of the poor, the orphans, the widows, etc., etc. Those are usually the things at the top of the list. Okay, homosexuality is there. Sexual abomination is certainly there. Right, it's mentioned in Leviticus 18:20 as the things that we should not do, because that's what caused the Canaanites to get thrown out of or will have caused the Canaanites to get thrown out of their land. But it's not the focal point, and it's not at the top of the list, and it never occurs alone. It always occurs within a matrix of many other things going on that represent a society going south. Greed and cruelty and Hamas and bloodshed and idol worship and all of that stuff. You can see it all in the modern day United States of America on the left in the leftist cities. That was one point I wanted to make. Next point. Another point I wanted to make very quickly was this idea of how could Lot throw his daughters to the dogs and say, just don't rape these men. I'll give you my daughters instead. And a lot of people, especially feminists, like to criticize this verse and say, oh, it just shows that the Torah has no consideration whatsoever for women. Women are just objects and blah blah blah. And that's actually not the case. It's not what's going on there. It took a long discussion, but very very briefly. These people had come under Lot's house for protection. Okay, and many sources will point this out. This is not just my chidush. This is not my idea. Okay, in the Middle East, as I know, from living many years there, when you come into someone's house, the guest is a sacred entity in the house. The guest is served like a king. The guest is given food, is given drink, is given lodging often, and is protected. When you go into someone's house, protected, and that's explicitly what it says there. It says I'd have to find the verse now, but it uses the word korat gag. These men have come under the protection of my roof, and shall I do such a thing to them? Right. So so Lot would rather than violate this basic sacred oath of protecting those who have come under his house. Why do they come into his house for protection? He would rather he would rather offer to send his daughters out. And I think the key point there is offer. I think that sometimes by doing that was a ploy, by saying, listen, this is such a bad thing you do. If you want, just take my daughters. Saying something like that might have the effect of calming the crowd down. Like, okay, this guy's really serious about wanting to protect these guests. He's so serious, he's even willing to toss us his daughters. So, all right, let's just chill out, guys. So I think that it was a ploy to protect the people. But even if so, that there is this kind of prime directive in many societies that the guest is like a king. If he comes under your house, then he's protected. And it would actually be worse in the eyes of in that mentality, it would be worse actually to throw your guests out than to throw your daughters out, because the daughters are at least your property to throw out in a certain sense, even though it's a horrible thing to do.
I'm sure that if he had sons, he might have offered the sons first.
I don't know about that. And that's the third thing. I don't think so. And that was my third point, is that he would rather see something natural happen than something unnatural happen. Okay, by throwing his daughters out, it might be a disgusting act. It might be rape, but at least it wouldn't be a violation of these men in the way that the townspeople wanted to do to them. At least it would be natural, vaginal sex rather than the anal raping of people who would come under his protection. I think for those three reasons, when you put it together, reason number one, the sacredness of honoring and protecting guests when they come under your house in the Middle East and throughout the world, in many places throughout the world, and not in the United States, because as I once watched a video of a travelogue to someone who was traveling in Iran, one of the people I follow a lot who travels all over the world, and he asked an Iranian who had lived in the United States, he said to the Iranian, he said, "Oh, the hospitality here is so amazing here in Iran. How do you compare it to hospitality in the United States?" And the Iranian who had lived in the United States says, "There is no hospitality in the United States." And it's true. Maybe in the small towns out in the Midwest or something, or in the South, but not in the big cities. So that's number one, the prime directive to protect guests. Number two is to understand that he didn't actually throw his daughters out there. It might have very well been a ploy. Like, let's say someone's about to, I don't know, what would be an analogy? Let's say someone's about to, rob you, and you say something like, all right, man, if you really want to take my stuff here, I know how you feel. Here, just take it. Take everything. You obviously need it more than I do. Just take everything, okay? You're saying that as a ploy, hoping that the guy is maybe going to say, "Oh, wow, this guy's really a good guy, and he's ready to give me everything." So then the robber might say back, "Forget it, man. Just get out of here," or something like that. So I think it was a ploy. And number three was, again, to at least cause there to be, if there was going to be a rape, at least it would be a rape of a natural sexual act rather than an unnatural sexual act. So for those three reasons, I think that explains pretty well why Lot was willing to offer, and again I emphasize the word offer, to sacrifice his daughters. So that was the second point. Very quick third point and last point, which is that when Lot says to where is it? This is Zohar. When he tries to convince his sons-in-law to come, and they think of him as a joker. Where is that, Yaakov? Do you know? Here it is. Verse 14. ויצא לוט וידבר אל חותניו לוקחי בנותיו ואומר קומו צאו מן המקום הזה כי משחית יהוה את העיר ויהי כמצחק בעיני התנאיו. Okay, we have this nincompoop who runs around with the Christians, who makes a claim that wherever you see the word mitzvah, or he makes a claim that the reason that Ishmael was thrown out of the house was because he was sexually molesting Isaac. Okay,
and that's horse crap.
Right, which is just a load of shit, but is a very nice, hot, popular issue. If you want like lots of popularity and people to like perk their ears up, say, "Oh, there was child abuse, there was sexual molestation going on in the Yitzhak, in the Abraham house, and so Abraham had to get rid of Ishmael." It's very achshavi. It's very like headline-y kind of thing, right? But this is ridiculous. And how does he say that? He relates it to when when I think it's with Rivka, and when Avimelech sees Rivka and Isaac doing something that only a man and a husband and wife would do, and he says he saw I think it's Isaac and Rivka, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was Abraham and Sarah, but I think it was Isaac and Rivka. I may be wrong. And he says that Isaac was mitzachek with Rivka, or maybe it was Abraham that was mitzachek with Sarah, and so he uses a hekesh, a very poor hekesh, but he uses a hekesh to say that because Isaac was mitzachek im Rivka, that implies that mitzachek means something sexual going on, and therefore when it says that Yishmael was mitzachek et Isaac, which is what it says, uses the same word, which really means he was just making fun of, he was taunting him, he was giving a hard time. That now the nincompoop that runs around with the Christians says that Yishmael was sexually molesting Isaac. Well, if that's the case, if mitzachek always means that, then here we see the word again, mitzachek, and so it must mean that
he was being a homo with his son-in-law.
He was being a child, he's being a child molester to his because he was a mitzachek be'enei chotnav, so he was child molesting his adult his adult sons-in-law. Okay, well, at any rate, this person, when he says things, he says it as if there's no doubt, it's clear 100%, and a lot of times this is very, very stupid and foolish things. And here's an example of a proof that one of the things that he's says is this great revelation. It's actually just a load of horse shit and stupid foolishness. Anyway, those are the three things I want to say. Obviously, there's a lot more to say. The end.
Look, guys, I apologize. I have to go. But it's been great. I really love it. This is the highlight of my week, is being able to have Torah study with you guys. And I hope it continues and I hope it grows. I hope there's more people that begins to come to the studio. You can come in and talk and share your opinions and everything.
Yeah, I love
But anyways, I would like to just say Shabbat Shalom to everyone who's still in Shabbat, and Shavua Tov to everyone who is now in the new week. And hope to see you next week.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Now I'll say the same thing. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. And if you want, I can go out with a little bit of music for a minute.
Okay.
Let's see what happens with music. Music. Hello. Why is there no music? 1 second. All right. End it whenever you want, Yaakov.
Okay. So, Shavua Tov, everyone.
God